Next we have Councillor Vicky Rains, Tansey Parish Council, to speak on item 13.
Yes, good evening. I'd like to talk about the proposals for Gypsy Traveller sites and the locations, the many locations that there are. So I'm talking about the 3 Tansley sites. One wonders why a village with so few amenities keeps being targeted disproportionately compared with similar sized settlements. We're very surprised at the inclusion of Nabhall Lane. We believe a council decision cannot be overturned within 6 months of its ratification, so wonder why you've put it in. We strongly object to the inclusion of Heathy-Lee, Nottingham Road, land allotted to the church wardens of Tansley to be held by them and their successors in trust for recreation for the residents of Tansley. Tansley Parish Council have maintained the land, mowing grass and cutting the hedges, to my knowledge, for at least 35 years. There has been no maintenance done by the District Council. Discussions have taken place with groups of residents who want to see Tansley have its own allotments. Liaison has taken place with adjacent landowners to gauge their opinions. It was felt it would be a suitable use of the land, which is bound by an SSI site and is adjacent to the Welcome to Derbyshire Dales signage. At this time, the land at Heathy-Lee is going through an agreed community asset transfer with Derbyshire Dales District Council. Our solicitors have completed as much work as they're able to do. We have been waiting for too long for Derbyshire Dales to finalise this asset transfer, which has resulted in time wasted and additional legal costs for the parish council. We question Derbyshire Dales' legal rights over this land vested to the church wardens of Tansley and placed in trust for its community. We note the land is not registered on the land registry and assume a genuine mistake has been made by Derbyshire Dales related to the true tenure of the recreation ground. We are in the process of discussing the legalities of this appropriation of this land by the local authority. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next person I'd like to invite up is Miss Victoria Friend, Rowsley Local Parish Council. Rowsley Local Parish Resident.
I'm also a parish councillor in Rowsley. I wanted to say that. The situation regarding the provision of a traveller site has gone on long enough. The council was told more than a decade ago that it needed to provide a permanent site for one traveller family, and now we have 2 different families who've declared themselves homeless within the Derbyshire Dales. It is clear this is an emotive issue within our district, made worse by the council's complete failure to find a suitable permanent site, which is their duty under law. However, the council not only have a duty to the travellers, they also have a duty to the communities and businesses within the district. Surely any decision made about where to house these families must take into consideration the impacts on local communities. You say in your report that there have been no complaints about the family at Matlock Station car park, and they have been there for 18 months. Is it purely coincidence that this site is some distance from local residences? Siting travellers in the middle of a small village has a disproportionate impact on the residents. Siting travellers in the only car park in Rowsley will render that car park unusable for anyone else, and it is a well-used site. Local businesses in Old Station Close rely on that car park and will suffer disproportionately in these trying economic times. The travellers have themselves stated that they do not want to be in Rowsley. They hate the site behind the car park, and quite frankly, I don't blame them. It is dark and damp and about as claustrophobic as any outdoor site can be. What is the point in forcing people to move somewhere they don't want to be and where the local community have demonstrated that they do not want them, just because the council have a piece of land that is a suitable size? Their feelings about Rowsley may explain why last time they were in the village they left the site in a disgusting mess. They defecated in the middle of the footpath on the Derwent Valley Heritage Way. They cut down trees and blocked the footpath with branches. They allowed their dogs to bark all the time. I know this because I could hear them inside my house. I could also hear the shouting and yelling very early in the morning from the humans on the site. There are plenty of sites on Appendix 1 that would not impact the local community so directly as the site at Roseley. There are also plenty of sites better suited to the travellers, closer to local amenities and in areas where the travellers would actually like to be. Also, the complete lack of management by officers of the Derbyshire Dales District Council last time the travellers came to Roseley helped to create the bad feeling on both sides that still obviously exists today. The council did not clear the site properly after the travellers left, and rubbish could be clearly seen from the street and road for months afterwards until volunteers actually came and cleared it. This was a complete dereliction of duty by the council. Thank you. Thank you.
On to item 3, approval of minutes of the previous meeting, which happens to be the 26th of May, the annual meeting. Can I find a proposer for those minutes, please? Councillor Froggatt, Councillor Wakeman. All those in favour, please show. Any against? Abstentions? That's carried. Thank you. Item 4. Is any members any wish to declare any interest? Item 5. Leaders' announcements. I'll move over to Councillor Purdy, please.
Thank you, Chair. Members, you may recall that I informed you in past meetings that Vision Derbyshire was formed about 2 years ago when all Derbyshire local authority leaders and chief execs met at the invitation of Councillor Barry Lewis, leader of Derbyshire County Council at Junction 28 Hotel off the M1 in order to discuss the then proposals on devolution by government. Present at that meeting were representatives of Derbyshire City Council also. A unanimous vote was made by all Derbyshire local authority leaders and chief execs that 1. Vision Derbyshire should be formed, 2. That we did not want a mayor or mayoral combined authority, 3. That regular meetings should take place with a view to engaging consultants to help determine what kind of authority Derbyshire wished to become. Derby City representatives stated that whilst they acknowledged and respected the formation of Vision Derbyshire, they did not wish to join at that stage. They were informed at the meeting that the door would be left open for them to join at any time. PricewaterhouseCoopers was subsequently engaged and a series of workshops took place between leaders and chief execs at Lea Hurst Holloway, which resulted in a number of ideas for future collaboration, and work streams were raised in order to deal with the business of the two-tier authorities. It is important to note that this work resulted in Derbyshire being at the head of the 9 counties deals announced earlier this year by government. Invitations to all councillors were sent out from time to time to enable an update on progress at virtual meetings. It is also important to note that the work of Vision Derbyshire preceded the White Paper on devolution. The delivery of the White Paper was frequently delayed, but was finally produced in February 2022. The content of the White Paper revealed, amongst many other issues, 3 funding streams. Level 1, status quo, as we are now with limited and diminishing funding from government and being very much reliant on income. Level 2, a Derbyshire combined authority, which would result in slightly more devolved powers and funding. Level 3, a mayoral combined authority, which ticked every box regarding devolved powers and funding. Following the delivery of the White Paper, we were subsequently informed by Councillor Barry Lewis at a virtual Vision Derbyshire meeting that talks had been held between the 4 leaders of Derbyshire, Derby City, Nottingham and Nottinghamshire. That's Councillor Barry Lewis, Councillor Chris Coulter, Councillor David Mellon and Councillor Ben Bradley, with a view to the formation of an East Midlands mayoral combined authority. Naturally, this led to a lot of disquiet, unease and in some cases anger in Vision Derbyshire, especially due to the fact that contained in the White Paper was no power of veto by second-tier authorities such as Derbyshire Dales. That, just bear with me, I think I might have got a page wrong here. That notwithstanding our still strongly held view that a mayoral system is not right for our area, that we have to do, there's a bit missing, I do apologise. So subsequent to that White Paper, it obviously changed the game plan, and the realisation that level 3, funding and all boxes ticked and powers, made us take the view that, notwithstanding our strongly held view that a mayoral system is not right for our areas, that we have to do right by our residents and businesses and have no choice but to accept that a mayoral system of governance is the only game in town that will receive extra powers and funding from government. I also said to Councillor Lewis that a mayor with full powers delegated to whoever it might be in the final analysis will not be right. Councillor Lewis is going around the county seeing all leaders, and Paul and I met him a few weeks ago when he asked for our views, and that is what I've just said, that notwithstanding our strong held view, the only game in town basically is that we seem to have to follow level 3 for the benefit of our residents. I remind you, when you compare the monies coming in from going into the West Midlands in comparison to monies coming into the East Midlands, we miss out substantially on huge sums of monies. So it's a fast-moving feast, members, and at a recent D2 meeting last week chaired by Elizabeth Fagan, Councillor David Mellon gave the same commitment Barry Lewis and others have given, that they want to see Derbyshire second-tier authorities at the governance table. I've strongly argued for that persistently, as have other leaders, but without that power of veto, it's extremely difficult. It's not contained in the white paper. So we're getting good voices from the 4 leaders, but at the end of the day, we've got nothing in writing, and so we need to keep pressing in that regard. I therefore wrote for the help of our MP, and I also wrote and lobbied the 2 candidates for the leadership of the Conservative Party, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak. So as I say, Councillor Lewis is presently going round talking to leaders and asking for their views. The deadline for the decision on this is expected to be 5th of September, 6th of September. And if it goes ahead, and obviously we may well be strongly influenced by government, then you can expect a mayor election in 2024. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Item 6, the Civic Chairman's announcements.
Thank you, Chair. The charity I've chosen to support this year, it's got over 35,000 members, 95% of which are volunteers and come from all walks of life. They rely on fundraising events and donations to keep them afloat. And I'm sure most of you have already seen the press statement Jim's released on the site. The charity is, of course, the RNLI, and in my view, it's the 4th Emergency Service. I'm under no illusion as to how difficult it is to raise funds in this present climate with the cost of living as it is. However, I'm remaining positive, and I hope that we can do them justice in our efforts to support them. Just Giving page has been set up on the website. I've also attended a number of events this last month or so as Civic Chair. The first being on the 17th of June at Castle View Primary School in Matlock, where the Lord Lieutenant planted an apple tree donated by the Lieutenancy, which was part of the Queen's Green Canopy programme. That was followed by a short tour of the school and light refreshments, and it was an interesting and enjoyable morning for all concerned. Again, on the 22nd of June, I was invited to attend Worksworth Memorial Hall for the AGM of the Derwent and Dove Scout Council. I was absolutely amazed at the number of opportunities this hard-working group of individuals provide for the scouting community. Much different to my day in the Scouts, I can tell you that. I was also asked to pass on their thanks to this council for the support. The 30th of June, I attended the home of Libby Lane in Duffield for a community and civic gathering followed by a buffet meal in the garden. About 30 people attended from various parts of the county. Libby was installed as the Bishop of Derby at the cathedral in 2019. But despite the pouring rain, again we had a pleasant evening and it was enjoyed by all. With your permission, Chair, I would like to call upon my Deputy, Councillor Atkin, to comment on the couple of visits that I weren't able to do myself. Councillor Atkin.
Thank you very much, Chair. Councillor. So I attended the handover of the Together artwork in Hawley's Park Head on the 30th of June. I suggest if you haven't gone and seen it, go and have a look. It's a very good installation. And on the 2nd of July, I attended the Buxton Tattoo in the aid of the Royal British Legion, which was a very, very lovely evening and raised lots of money. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Moving on to item 7, to receive all the minutes of the committees. Can I see a proposal for these?
I'll move them, Chair.
Second. All those in favour of receiving these minutes? Against? Yep. Thank you. Unanimous. Thank you very much. Item 8. Questions from members. I'm going to leave this over because I believe they've all been put out. I think you've all got a copy of the questions in front of you. Do you wish to peruse over them for a couple of minutes? And then I will lead over to Councillor Purdy to give his answers. Okay, okay. So you want the question reading out? Okay. So the first question then is from Councillor Slack to Councillor Purdy, Leader of Council. Councillor Slack, do you wish to read your question out?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Over the last number of... Beg your pardon. Over the last number of years, we've seen an increase in the Derbyshire Dales of small dwellings being acquired by people and companies that usually holiday lets and holiday homes, which fall into the category of second homes. Also, at the same time, many young local people looking to acquire homes for the first time in their local areas near their families are being priced out of the market by people that are purchasing the dwellings as an investment. Also making great deal of money out of continually letting the properties for inflated rates well above normal rents. Yes, we do need tourists to visit the Derbyshire Dales. We have many good hotels, bed and breakfasts and self-catering holiday flats around the district. But there's a great problem that many young people have to come from their Derbyshire Dales to get onto the property ladder. In turn, this leads to families being split and villages with less children to sustain schools, and the community spirit diminishes. Recently, Whitby in North Yorkshire, the council had a local referendum on this very issue of holiday homes, second homes, and there was a vote which was overwhelmingly for restrictions to be brought in on this subject. I also know there's a problem in Wales, Cornwall, Devon and in Norfolk as well. Recently, National Survey found that the last 4 years that holiday lets or second homes had increased by 40%. That's quite significant, really. Also recently, the Queen's speech at the opening of Parliament, there were references made about the second homes and the use of holiday homes and holiday lets in regards to council tax to help council in this issue. Earlier this year, we did vote to use council tax to bring back empty homes into use again. So would you agree, Councillor Purdy, that there's a need for controls of second home problems? Thank you.
Well, thank you for your question, Councillor Slack. You will be aware that I've raised my concerns with this issue in previous meetings. For example, my favourite holiday spot in this country, Salcombe in Devon, has near 90% second homes. The simple answer is that yes, it would be good to see more controls to reduce the number of second homes within the Dales and give local people more opportunity to buy such properties as their main home. There are just under 1,000 second homes in the Derbyshire Dales out of a total housing stock of approximately 34,000. The Derbyshire Dales has the 61st highest number of second homes of all English local authorities. There are very few controls available to councils to control the numbers of second homes. The government is currently taking the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill through Parliament, and this includes provisions that both impact empty homes and second homes. In relation to second homes, the bill makes provision to allow councils to increase the council tax by 100%. Given the timetable for the bill and the implementation period set within the bill, it is likely an increase might only be in place by 2024-25. Any change in council tax policy would be subject to approval by members, most likely in the next council.
Right, thank you, Councillor Purdy. I appreciate your support on this matter. This is a problem, as I've already expressed, right through the villages, as we see schools at short numbers in village schools, and we see deserted villages in the middle of the week. So this is a problem. Would it be possible, Councillor Purdy, to set up a working group to look into this question?
I'll look into that, Councillor. I'm not so sure that that would work, but I'm certainly happy to talk to Mr Coggins about that.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I'm going to bring yourself back again, Councillor Slack, because I believe you've got your next question to put over.
The second question is, Wirksworth looks to be the market town that's been left behind in regards to having EV charging points installed. On the old marketplace, there is provided just one EV, and the other one is at the local co-op. Number of residents have contacted me about the lack of EV charging points in Wirksworth. Many residents around the centre of the town have no facilities for installing charging points of their own. So Wirksworth, we have the DDC car park at Wood Street, Canterbury Road, which would be an ideal car park for EV charging points to be installed on the car park. Would allow residents to pay for charging, but it's a free car at the moment, so it would be a big incentive for many residents to move over to electric vehicles. Charging points could be installed at the lower end of near the recycling bins or at the top end near Wood Street. In the next few years, with the increasing move over to electric vehicles, there could be developed along the car park. So if we get one installation, we could continue to connect onto it. Recent recent reviews identify the shortage of fast charging points all around the country, except in London. So there's need to be addressed quickly, as we are going to encourage residents to invest in electric cars. Thank you.
Again, thank you for your question, Councillor Slack. Nationally, there is a huge challenge if, as a country, we are to meet the target of 300,000 public charge points by 2030. Locally, we, that's Derbyshire Dales District Council and Derbyshire County Council, are working on developing the EV charging offer across the county. DDC are looking at submitting an application for funding to the on-street charge point scheme this year, which specifically looks at increasing the infrastructure for residents for 7 kilowatt chargers. Looking at the criteria and geographical locations, we have shortlisted the following car parks to be assessed by the EV charge point operator once they have been appointed. 1. Cattle Market Ashbourne, 2. Artist Corner Battle, 3. Granby Road Bakewell, 4. Oddfellows Athersidge, 5. Netherend Baslow, 6. Canterbury Road Wirksworth, 7. Marketplace Cromford, and 8. Town Hall Front Matlock. If the bid for the ORCS funding is successful, those car parks which meets the criteria will be installed in 2023. Further work has been carried out by DCC, who are specifically looking at the provision of rapid chargers, 22 kilowatt across the county, and the following car parks have been shortlisted with a view to submitting a local electric vehicle infrastructure funding bid. All locations will still need to be assessed and meet the relevant criteria before they can be progressed. They have shortlisted the following car parks within Derbyshire Dales: 1 Granby Road Bakewell, 2 Artist Corner Matlock, 3 Cattle Market Ashbourne, 4 Oddfellows Alisage, and 5 Nether End Baslow.
Thank you, Councillor Purdy, for your support in this matter and all the possible places that they could be installed. It's going to be, as you say, a big challenge for us all, and we need to meet this challenge. We need to get on top of climate change. So thank you for your support. Thank you.
And your third. Thank you, Councillor Slack.
Would the leader of the council consider joining the councils for fair taxation declarations, which many councils of different political persuasions have joined? In research conducted by Data Lab for Fair Tax Federation found that from 2014 to 2019, a huge £37.5 billion of public procurement contracts have been awarded to companies that have links with tax havens overseas. Recent research shows the loss of £17 billion in corporation tax, the results of shifting profits to tax havens. Significant recent polling showed that 66% of the public believe that the government and local authority councils should at least consider the ethics of alongside value for money and quality of service provided in awarding the contracts to companies. It's more important than ever at this time in financial hardship in our community that we consider joining with other councils from all parts of the country in the Council for Fair Taxation Declaration. It will show that this council is adhering for good ethics and procurement of the contracts. Thank you,
Thank you, Councillor Slack. Well, you have been busy, haven't you? Thank you for bringing this to my attention. This is ultimately a question of policy for the council. I note that there is a template motion on the Fair Tax website, which has been used by other councils that have made the Fair Tax declaration. You might want to bring this forward to a future council meeting for a debate and determine if this is something that you wish to support yourself, Councillor Slack. In the meantime, I will commit to working with officers to understand the implications for the organisation of signing such a declaration. I've obviously spoke with our officers and there's some implications. Given our limited resources, we need to be careful about increasing the administrative burden on officers unless it is of value. I will be happy to write to you outside of this meeting once I have had the opportunity to fully discuss the impact of this upon the council, which may inform your view on how we might proceed in respect of this matter.
Thank you very much, Councillor Purdy, for your support. And yes, I will bring this forward as a motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Slack, for those questions. I'd like to bring in Councillor O'Brien with your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Purdy, in an excellent interview you gave last week to Radio 4's Today programme, it was actually at 7:20 in the morning last Friday, about housing issues in the Derbyshire Dales, you said that if you grow up in a village, it's your lifeblood. If you want to stay in the village when you grow up, you should be enabled to stay there. Families and young people in the villages of Eam and Hathersage and many other Peak District villages are in that position and have been pleading for more affordable housing for many years. I'm sure you will agree that it is heartbreaking to listen to their stories and to hear how they are being forced to move away. and I count on your support and that of the majority group for our officers to enable them to bring forward schemes in Eyam and Hathersage at the earliest possible opportunity, and to join with me in urging the Peak District National Park Authority, through its chair and members, to be part of the solution rather than the problem.
Well, first of all, Councillor O'Brien, thank you for your kind comments, but I'll give you a story, if I may, before I give the official response. About 10 years ago, we lost an affordable housing scheme at Bonsall, and I had to listen to mothers crying outside the village hall because certain people in the village who had got money took us to judicial review, which we eventually won, but by that time Nottingham Housing Association lost the grant. As you know, the provision of affordable housing has been a priority for both the council and myself as leader for many years. The council has a good track record in the delivery of new affordable homes, averaging 76 new affordable homes each year. The council has also become a direct provider of council housing again to further intervene in the housing market. The housing team have the full support of the council to enable and hopefully deliver new homes in Eyam and Hathersage, as well as other villages across the Peak Park and our own plant area. The development process can take time, and the Peak District National Park have been working with the housing team to assess potential sites, a process that I am led to understand you've also been part of as a ward member. I've recently held a meeting with Andrew McCoy, Chairman of the Peak District National Park, when we had a catch-up on various interests to both authorities, including the provision of affordable homes. And Andrew is to arrange a meeting at the earliest opportunity for us to meet the new Chief Executive, Mr Phil Mulligan, after he joins the authority in September of this year, when I will yet again press the issue on much needed affordable homes in respective areas. You might be interested to know at the Chief Executive breakfast meeting yesterday morning, I attended with Paul, Steve Capes and representatives from various businesses in this district at the Institute gallery at Whitworth Institute. A question regarding affordable homes revealed a collective answer from those business representatives that the lack of affordable homes is a serious bar to not only securing new staff, but to their retention.
Well, thank you, Gary, very much for your support, which I very much welcome. I would say that in Hathersage and Eyam, although there may have been 76 new affordable homes each year on average across the district, there have probably been at least 76 families and young people who have had to move away from those two villages during the last 10 years because of the lack of affordable housing. I wish I could share your optimism about the Peak District National Park Authority and its planners. Unfortunately, in Hathersage at least, the omens are not good. In the event that their planning officers will not support proposals put forward by our housing team and supported by the community, can we continue to rely on your support in taking the matter forward with Peak District National Park Authority members?
Absolutely.
Thank you, councillors, for those questions. Thank you, Councillor Purdy, for your answer. I'd like to now move on to item 9, proposal of a motion from Councillor O'Brien. So I will leave to yourself again, Councillor O'Brien, if you would like to lead with your motion. Thank you.
We just pause for a minute while Lucy puts something on the screen. Thank you. Thank you, Chair and colleagues, for the opportunity to bring forward this proposal this evening. I'm quite sure a number of members have used Grindelford Station or are perhaps familiar with the renowned station cafe in the old ticket office. Just to put you in the picture, the station is on the Sheffield to Manchester rail line in a conservation area and of course in the National Park. It's at the entrance to the Totley Tunnel, is in a natural amphitheatre and is surrounded on 3 sides by residential properties. However, I suspect that no one here this evening has visited the station in the early hours of a Saturday, Sunday or even Monday morning. At these times, it is more akin to living next to a combination of a shipyard on the Clyde, Forge Masters in Sheffield, and under the Wembley Stadium floodlights. And I think you've heard evidence this evening of that. Network Rail used the former sidings area as a base for 6 different engineering and maintenance teams. These terms worked throughout the night on many weekends during the year and occasionally on weekday nights. They have been doing so for the last 20 years. But during that time, the level of activity has increased 20 times, to the point where it has become intolerable for residents. And I use the word intolerable deliberately. It is not just a nuisance. Families' lives are being made a misery. A misery to the point where finding a new location for the base for Network Rail's operations is the only answer. I say only answer because the residents have held many meetings over the year with Network Rail to try to find a way of working which suits all parties. Both our previous and current MPs have been involved, and our Environmental Health Service have a thick file of complaints and continue to be engaged, probably on a weekly basis. But there's been no improvement. If anything, the disturbance continues to get worse. And Network Rail have made it clear that they intend to continue to operate from the site and can offer no ways of improving the situation. Now you may ask, why am I bringing this proposal here this evening? Surely this is just a small local problem. Colleagues, this is what the District Council is here for. This isn't about politics. This is about our responsibilities as a council for the well-being of our residents. And just as we come together as one council to support the cinema project in Matlock, the regeneration of Ashbourne Town Centre, a new village hall in Marston Montgomery, and council housing in Monash, so I'm asking you that we do the same for the residents of Grindelford. You may legitimately ask if there are any alternative locations. Now, it's not up to me or indeed the council to look for sites, but what I will say is that Network Rail have land at Totley, at Millhouses, and up at Hope. And of course, they have just opened up a new base on the road between Hallitage and Bamford. So the short answer is yes. You may well also ask, haven't our officers got enough to do? Well, I've taken the trouble to discuss the proposal with the Chief Officer who is most heavily involved with this issue. That is Tim Braund. And without putting words directly into his mouth, he is comfortable with the proposal, so long as we are careful to manage expectations and understand that the resources available will be limited. What I would add, though, is if we are successful in working with Network Rail to find an alternative location, this will relieve our officers of what is already a considerable burden. I would just like to make one final point. The reason for the second part of the proposal is that Network Rail have told residents that, in their opinion, the council have said that they are satisfied with the way the site is being operated, and that they therefore have no intention of making any further improvement. This is categorically not the case, and I'm sure our officers will be happy to confirm this. Colleagues, I commend this proposal to you and would like to formally move it. But at your discretion, Chair, I'll be pleased to try to answer any questions members may have.
Chair, I'm happy to second the motion.
Councillor Chapman.
Thanks, Chair. I fully support Peter's motion, and particularly the evidence provided by Mr. Davies with his recording. It must be horrendous to have to put up with that. The stretch of rail between Grindelford and Hallitage and just beyond, sort of towards Sickleholme Golf Club land, is where the actual Derbyshire Dales involvement stops, and obviously the Door and Totley Tunnel the other way is that. So would it help the situation if we liaised with High Peak, where the Hope Valley line continues on through after it's passed through Hathersage Station, and use a combined effort to see if they've got. I mean, it can't do any harm. At least that they may be able to suggest something within their own territory where the line continues to run. So, just a suggestion that we could join forces maybe.
Mr Chapman. Councillor Burford.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, sorry, I've got a very dry throat for medication I'm on. I'd like to third this motion, actually. I would have seconded it otherwise. You might wonder why I have an interest in this, but as a former employee of the Peak District National Park Authority, I was involved on several occasions with the activities of Network Rail at Grindleford Station or its vicinity. Mainly latterly, it was to do with the proposed loop in the valley, and several sites were proposed over different periods of time. So I did do site visits. I met with colleagues, representatives of Network Rail, and I was always concerned as a landscape architect about both the visual and the, if you like, the sound problems that local residents face. And we did meet with local residents on several occasions when they were complaining about the noise issues. I'm talking about sort of probably 15, even 20 years ago. And it's obviously got a lot worse, as the gentleman from Grindelford showed us when he played the tape of his filming of the activities there on, I think he said, a Sunday morning, which is quite disgusting, really. And those of us who are, Sue and I, are station adopters in Matlock, and we have problems with Network Rail as station adopters as well, in terms of the maintenance of Matlock Station. So I can only support this motion. I think there's something we've got to do, and I also support Councillor Chapman in his proposal to liaise with High Peak Borough Council, because obviously the boundaries are quite close. I mean, it is quite ridiculous, really, that in a location like that, close to residential properties, that sort of activity should be sanctioned by anyone in authority, let alone a quango, if you like Network Rail, where there's no democratic control over their activities. So I'm very happy to support this motion.
Councillor Ratley.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to say a few words in support of this motion. I had intended actually to second it, so I'm actually delighted that Councillor Chapman came forward and is seconding it from that side of the room, as it were, because for me this is a motion that is so needing of support across all parties. I think this is not a political issue as such. This is a case of us using our local authority powers to try and persuade a large utility company, transport company, of the harm that they are bringing about on the small community there. It's very like a sort of Goliath and David situation, you know. If there's one thing positive thing we can do in July, this would be the thing for all us to come together and support this this motion, because we have a duty of care at the end of the day. You know, the residents have a sort of statutory right to appeal to us, and then we have a responsibility in turn to say to them, yes, we will do our utmost to defend your rights and indeed to try and alleviate the problems that you have. We're not looking for huge legal costs, you know. We're not wanting to somehow take this to the High Court and incur all sorts of financial penalties, as it were. We're simply trying to point out almost the error of the ways of someone who is using their powers unduly and really without consideration for those being affected by their actions. So, as I say, I do feel that this is something that we should all get behind and say, yes, we know that some of the previous actions or indeed overtures to others have not yielded fruits, but you know we will give you our support and if possible try to reawaken some of those that you have previously turned to and say to them, look, perhaps on a collective basis, we can bring about a resolution for you.
Thank you, Councillor Ratcliffe, and I'd just like to inform you that it was Councillor Purdy that did second it, and not Councillor Chapman. He just came in with the... So, yeah. And I myself will echo your thoughts that we, yeah.
It's an issue that I would like to think there is no division down this room over that.
Councillor Slack, did you wish to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm very pleased to support this motion, and I'm very pleased that all the councils seem to be united in this. So we look to be united and working for the community, and this is what we're all about, what we're here for, to work and get the best for our community. So, yes, I'm fully supportive of this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hobson.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to support Councillor O'Brien's motion and thank Mr Tamlin and Mr Davies for speaking so eloquently and playing your recording, as well as the other people who've written in. I really hope constructive dialogue and do, as our other councillor colleagues have said, do something to help resolve the situation.
Councillor Finesse?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, I live in the Hoe Valley. I must admit I haven't witnessed, the problems here, but they do sound pretty awful. The only other sidings I can think of on that line are at Bridge and Cement Works, and I wonder through you, if I can ask Councillor if Breedon have been approached about this, about the possibility of the works we're putting on their sidings.
Councillor O'Brien, do you wish to answer?
I can say that to date, unfortunately, Chris, Network Rail have refused to engage in any discussions about relocations. We haven't discussed the Hope sidings, but I can tell you that one of the reasons they have refused to enter discussions about the land they have in Millhouses and Topley is because they say that is in a different area of Network Rail. And those of you who follow the debate about King's Cross and Euston and the 5 minutes walk will see it appears to be an insuperable problem for Network Rail Northwest region to talk to Network Rail Northeast region.
Thank you, Chair. Can I come back here? Just thinking, if you move to Millhouses or somewhere in that area, there's going to be a residential problem. People there are going to be very annoyed about it. Whereas the Breedon sidings, which is between Hope and Edale, there is no residential around there, and sort of the sound wouldn't be a problem.
Thank you. Is there anybody else wishing to make any comments? Sorry, Councillor Purdy, you wish to come back? Yes?
Well, I wanted to jump into second because there's absolutely no division and should be no division on this issue. I'm also a station volunteer at Cromford, and we also have problems with Network Rail. So they do seem to belong to themselves. I'd too like to thank the two speakers, Mr Tamlin and Mr Davis, and of course that sound recording was, very impacted. So I have deepest sympathy with what you're suffering up there. I checked with Tim also, Councillor O'Brien, because I want to make sure that, again, was there something we could do, knowing the entity of law that Network Rail adhere to and work to. But this, as you say, is intolerable. Not to engage is not good for their publicity or their reputation. And of course this meeting is being recorded, so hopefully that will get back to and filter through to them. So more than happy, and I think what I'll do is I'll liaise with Tim and yourself, Councillor O'Brien, and we'll work out a mechanism how to take this forward. Another thing I'd like to think about also is, I think at some stage, some publicity to outline the stance that Network Rail is taking. It might be some advantage.
Anybody else who wishes to make any comments? Upon that, I will come back to you, Councillor O'Brien. I would just like to make a point. Sitting here, I do concur with what our fellow councillors have said, and I thank yourself, Councillor O'Brien, for taking it upon you to bring this as a motion for the benefit of your ward members and the situation that they're in, and welcome the two members who came and spoke about it. It isn't nice, and unfortunately there are too many big fish in the sea that us little ones sometimes don't get to fight, but I'm sure we will all get behind this and try as we might, and let's hope some kind of solution comes from it. Councillor O'Brien, if you'd like to come back.
Thank you very much, Chair, and a very sincere thank you to colleagues around the Chamber for your obvious support. It's very much appreciated. Not so much appreciated by myself, but appreciated by the residents of this part of Grindelford, and I would like to publicly thank them because I'm actually speaking on behalf of residents of Grindelford. I think they've worked really hard over the last 10 years to reach an accommodation with Network Rail. Through no fault of their own, Network Rail has refused to listen. And I sincerely hope that Network Rail will take, I hope they are listening and watching this evening, and I think they will take a message from what they've heard. And certainly I hope they will engage with the council in a constructive way. And I also hope that in the interim they will take rather more seriously their attempts to mitigate the terrible disturbance that they bring to our residents. So again, colleagues, thank you very, very much for your support this evening.
Thank you. So with that, the motion put before you by Councillor O'Brien, seconded by Councillor Purdy. Would we like to take the vote? All in favour, please show. I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody. Okay. Item 10, provisional revenue outturn. Karen, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report deals with the revenue account outturn for 2021-22, and the report shows that there's a surplus or an underspending of £732,113 for that year, compared with the budget that was set back in March 2021. This figure is provisional outturn, as indicated in the report, because the financial services team are still actually working on the draft accounts to finalise it. We're hoping that the report on the statements of accounts, the accounts themselves, will be ready to publish on the Council's website by tomorrow, as the statutory deadline is the 31st of July. But there is a risk that this deadline might be missed. This will be the first time that I can ever remember that we will have missed the deadline for the statutory accounts. The deadline originally was May, but the government extended it to the end of July because of the pandemic and the backlog of work. But this year we've had particular problems finalising the accounts, And as most members are aware, we've had a lot of vacant posts in the financial services team. In fact, we've had one senior accountant post that we've advertised since last November, and we still haven't managed to fill it, even with a 12% market supplement. While we have had agency staff, apart from myself, of the qualified accountants in the team, all have been with the council for less than 12 months. So we've lost that continuity of knowledge, and that's contributed to the delays. While there might be a delay, I'm hoping that if we miss tomorrow's deadline, we should have the accounts ready in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So it shouldn't affect the start of the audit, which isn't scheduled until October anyway, because like us, the auditors have had recruitment and retention problems. Any changes that do arise from the provisional outturn will be reported to either Governance and Resources Committee or full council when the audited accounts are prepared later this financial year. At this stage, I'm not anticipating any changes. So the report indicates that there is a surplus of 732,000, and recommendation number 10 shows how we recommend to deal with that. The first 3 of those items were mentioned in a report to members in January this year, when we already were forecasting an underspend. The rest of the recommendations relate to asking members to approve either transfers that were already in the budget or some that have come up since because we've received more grants or because expenditure hasn't taken place in 21-22 and we're carrying it forward into 22-23. The reasons for the variance and the underspend are set out in Appendix 3 to the report. This shows details of the significant variances. And the details of the subsequent reserve and balances are shown in Appendix 2. So the total transfers to reserves indicated in this report would bring balances at the 31st of March to £22.9 million. When the budget was set back in March 2021, forecast balances at that time were expected to be £11 million. So you can see that balances have increased by £11 million, 11 to £12 million. This is mainly because we've received more grants than expected and not spent the associated money, and some expenditure has been less than anticipated. But this extra amount in reserves does offer us extra financial resilience, particularly the amounts in the general reserve, which might be needed to deal with the inflationary pressures that we're now facing and are now excessively more than we anticipated when we set the budget for 22-23. So I'm asking members to approve the recommendations in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Purdy, anybody wishing to?
If anybody's got any questions, Chair, I'd like to move the recommendations and add that I've said to Karen, who we all know is one of our most efficient professional officers, not to beat herself up about this, because I repeat, I attended an East Midlands Council meeting 2 weeks ago when all East Midlands Council leaders reiterated the same problems that we're suffering. So all local authorities in this country are going through a crisis. A Derby City leader said he thinks we're walking into a perfect storm with the loss of local authority staff, the inability to recruit new staff, and sometimes the ability to keep staff. So there's an East Midlands piece of work been approved by the Chair that will come to all of East Midlands authorities to start progressing this, and obviously it will mean representation to government. So please don't beat yourself up, Karen. We know full well that your staff are working hard in difficult circumstances. So happy to move, Chair.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
Yes.
I'll second this, Chair, and if I may just make on points that I picked out of this report, which for me were important and significant, I think. First of all, was the good news that, of course, that council tax and business rate collections was back on track again, despite some falling off in 2022 2021. So that's good to see that, this is being restored. The second thing, which is really good news, and I think you've really referred to this, Gary, is the fact that yet again our revenue account is balanced, and not every authority is able to achieve that. That some of them, in fact, are going into the red, aren't they? So we're doing extremely well. The second thing I think is very important, because it can, sometimes you can get a misunderstanding, as it were. You can think to yourself, oh, we've got all these reserves about, why can't we use it? But you make the point in paragraph 1.2 that these funds should not be regarded as being available for general use. They are earmarked. I have to say, one good transfer that you've made, I think, is this 223,000 to fund the inflationary pressures that we're likely to expect. Well, we know we're going to experience them, and goodness knows when we're going to see the back of that. So I think that's really good. If I could just ask you a question that might seem not directly about this, but I think it is in some way. We've made a lot of transfers into reserve from one thing or another, and some of it has arisen through underspends. Does the council have any monies left over from government funds that were provided during the COVID pandemic that could be used to supplement our discretionary and housing support funds? Because one of the real pleasures on Tuesday was that report about that fund and the good work it was doing. I'd like to think that perhaps there was a bit of money about that we could add to it.
Yes. So lots of the transfers to reserves, as you say, were because of underspends. Some of it were underspends where we hadn't had capacity to do the work, and that will subsequently be spent in 22-23 and the grant used. In terms of housing, we did put more money into the household support fund because our allocation, I think, was £86,000, and we topped it up to £100,000. So we have contributed to that. And as you know, we've also got a council tax support discretionary fund of £18,000, and I have said to members that I'll come back if that turns out to be insufficient.
Thank you. Councillor Donnelly, do you wish to make any comments?
No, thanks, I was just going to second it, and yes, I'm more than happy to support the report, and may I take this opportunity again to congratulate Karen on all her hard work and in a very understaffed office. Thank you.
It has been proposed and seconded. Is anybody else wishing to make a comment? Councillor O'Brien.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Now, what the comment? I'm going to make a comment, and it could very easily be misunderstood. So I want to make sure it isn't, because I think, as others have hinted, our finance team are responsible for managing our finances. They're not, in general, responsible for spending the money. So I want to talk about the underspend, the underspend of the £732,000 underspend last year. This is equivalent to almost £10 for every resident of our district. And when I've looked at the underspends over the last years, they are regularly in the hundreds of thousands of pounds, which we then put into reserves. So the effect of this is, over the years, we probably have several £100 of unspent council tax, which we raised from residents, stashed away for services which we haven't delivered to them. We've discussed previously here why we can't use these underspends to offset subsequent rises in council tax, which I accept and I think everyone has accepted. But what we've never discussed, because we've always said, yes, we should put this money that we've raised from residents, we should put it into reserves. What we've never discussed is either the suggestion which Councillor Ratcliffe has made, that we could actually use these unspent monies to reinforce some of the services which we already provide, and others might be our programme to insulate homes, whereas we know we don't have sufficient monies from government to do as many homes as we wish. Or we might, especially at this current time, we might consider a way in which we could in fact reimburse residents for money which we've raised from them and not used. We obviously wouldn't do that at the end of each year, but we might, for example, say that over a 4-year term as an administration, if we've not spent £1 million, which is probably about the figure you might arrive, we might take a view as to whether that £1 million should actually be reimbursed to our residents. I think this is much a moral issue as a financial issue, and I think it's something I'm going to be interested in discussing with colleagues over the next few months. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, if this is off topic, please stop me. But it's something that Karen raised, and that is the shortage of staff, and that happens right across the authority. I'm wondering whether there is something we might be doing in terms of apprenticeships. In general, local authority staff are probably better paid than the average in Derbyshire Dales. One of the objectives, economic objectives, is actually to raise the level of income within Dales. Is there any way that we can support the local authority by having more apprentice schemes, and whether that's I'm not sure that's possible in the financial in Karen's area, but in other areas it may be possible.
Karen, do you want to just...
Yeah, we did have an apprentice in the accountancy section and before that in the audit section, but we found that the supervisory arrangements, let's say, the monitoring and mentoring and supervision had a significant impact on the managers of those teams. So we've tended to delete those more recently from the establishment. What we did have in internal audit was a sort of trainee post, a career grade post, but as you know, that auditor's now resigned, so we hope to try that again. And in the future, you know, I will be, you don't have to have an apprenticeship post, you know, and we'll be looking to encourage the accounting technicians to take up training again. I used to always have a trainee accountant, although it wasn't necessarily called that. But we will be looking at that again when we get a more stable team.
Thank you for that. Councillor Burford.
Just thinking or speaking out loud of some thoughts. Derbyshire Dales is a very nice area to live in. Have we thought of going off to universities at graduation time and trying to encourage them to come and work for us and live in a desirable area?
Actually, Councillor Rowe suggested that at the Governance and Resources Committee. So no, you weren't there. So I have said that if we're not able to recruit this time round, that might be something we'd look at. I don't know what it would cost to pay a bursary or whatever, but it's definitely worth exploring.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to make? Councillor Slack.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I've got quite a lot of information about students coming from universities. A lot have been graduating recently, and in the financial departments as well. So these people could be brought into the organisation and trained, could they, Karen?
They could if we've got vacancies, which obviously we have in audit and accountancy.
Yeah.
The accountant one we would normally ask for somebody with a qualification, so you'd expect they'd have that if they were leaving university.
Exactly, yeah.
I think the problem we've got is that our salaries probably aren't commensurate with the private sector anymore. They've fallen behind because of the pay freezes.
Yeah.
And also where we used to have the advantage of offering agile working, family-friendly working policies, a lot of the private sector are now doing that too. So we've lost that competitive edge.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else wishing to make any comments? With that, it has been proposed and seconded. I'd like to go to the vote. All in favour, please show. Yes, thank you very much. Moving on to item 11, capital programme outturn and revised capital programme for 22-23 and 24-25. Karen, again, thank you.
Thank you. So members will be aware that capital expenditure is related to fixed assets, and this report shows the outturn, the actual expenditure on fixed assets for 21-22 compared with the capital programme. The report's in 4 parts. The first part shows the provisional capital outturn and the actual expenditure for 21-22, and shows that it amounted to 4.45 million, which is just under £1.5 million less than the original approved programme. The explanations for the major under and overspends are set out in the report. Most of the projects that underspent have been carried forward to be spent in 22-23. So the next part of the report provides an update on the capital programme for 2022-3 onwards, bringing forward the underspends from last year, and also adding some growth items that are set out in paragraphs 1.7 and 1.8 of the report. The largest of these is the addition of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, just under £2 million, which was approved by Council on Tuesday and isn't a separate report, as mentioned when I drafted this report. The third part of the report, in paragraphs 1.9 to 111, indicates to members some potential future capital projects, some of them where we've put in bids for funding. And the final part of the report shows the proposed financing of the capital programme, and Appendix C shows the balance of funds available after that. As I've indicated, there are risks with the capital programme set out in the report, but I'm asking members to approve the report recommendations. Thank you.
Questions, any members? Councillor Donnelly.
Having debate?
Yes, would you like to move this?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm more than happy to move the report. Thank you.
Councillor Wakeman.
Yes, I'd like to thank Karen for this report, and I'll second it, Chair.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
I do have a question, Chair, if you'll allow me. And forgive me, Karen, if it's a question that maybe is a bit simplistic in a sense. But can you tell me, I'm looking at paragraph 1.7, and it's about the third paragraph down. Why on earth it is that we are providing funding, albeit that we've attained, gained this through the government's Changing Places Fund, for toilets at Chatsworth House and Sudbury Hall, one of which is National Trust, the other is a charitable trust that I've often been told doesn't pay any tax, rightly or wrongly. But why are we doing it?
I think the simple
Can't
answer,
they do it themselves?
the simple answer to that is that they could not apply for the funding. The way the government have set up the scheme, it had to come through the local authority.
House needed to apply for any funding. Sell one of the Vermeers. Sell one of the other. I'm being flippant, but you get my point. You know, somebody who is from the
A lay community might well look at that and think, what on earth are we doing this for? £69,000.
I think.
Anyway, as I say,
you've answered it.
I think there was a previous
And
report.
I have one other question, if you'll allow me. And I'm sure there's a good reason for it, but recommendation 4, when I first read it, signalled a slight anxiety warning lamp. I can understand why you want to give authority to the Director of Regeneration to be dealing with the expenditure within this Prosperity Fund grant, but I always like to think that members have the first nod of approval on expenditure.
So this echoes a similar recommendation that was in the report on the Shared Prosperity Fund that members considered on Tuesday. And basically the reason for it is that at this stage we don't know the exact division between revenue and capital expenditure. And we won't know that until we start to, if we're successful, we start to roll out the schemes. Because it, particularly for the elements of the project where people can apply for grant or businesses can apply for grant, until they apply, tell us what they want to use it for, we won't know whether it's going to be capital or revenue expenditure. So it's not an increase in the total, it's a change between capital and revenue and possibly a change over financial years. But the total will be what it is.
Councillor Allison. Thank you, Chair. I just want to pick up on something that Councillor Radcliffe mentioned about Sudbury Hall and the funding that they're getting. I was sort of on the periphery of that going through, and Tim's team actually put the grant application through. Sudbury Hall and Chatsworth weren't able to apply for this funding themselves. They had to go through the local authority to get it. And as far as I understand, Tim, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, they have to make these facilities available to anybody, not just the users of or the people that pay to get pay the entrance fee to get into these facilities. So they are available for all disabled users, whether they're using the going into the hall or going into the Chatsworth estate. Thank you. Tim, would you like to respond?
Thanks, Chair. I can confirm that. I can't claim credit for getting the grant. That was actually Becky Bryan, as was Rebecca Cummings, as she now is, in Ash's team who did the groundwork. But Mike Goldsworthy's been involved, so I have to. And yeah, that's absolutely correct. This is a government-funded initiative, well supported by the Changing Places organisations that do it, and it is available. That these facilities do have to be available to people who require those facilities in general, not just to paying guests. So yeah, quite right, Councillor Harrison.
Thank you for making those points. So it has been moved and seconded. Anybody else wishing to make any comments? Then I'll go to the vote. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That's carried. Moving on to item 12, financial management system. Karen again, please.
Thank you, Chair. This report is seeking a supplementary revenue budget of £39,778 a year to be used for the Council's financial management system. I'm sure that members would much rather spend that sort of extra money on things like toilets, parks, many other services, rather than a back office financial management system. But the fact is that we wouldn't be able to monitor our spending and run the council's finances efficiently without a fully supported, decent financial management system. Although I'm seeking an extra £40,000 a year from 2022-23 for the software, I have pointed out in the report that in the past we've spent the equivalent of £21,000 a year from capital. So if you knock that off the 40, I'm actually asking for an extra £19,000 a year. And for that, we will get increased functionality that we don't have now, that should make our procedures more efficient and maybe make the lives of our accounting team more enriched. And also Unit 4 are going to provide what they call a managed application service, which basically means a consultant that we can call to help us resolve problems, improve the system, and get the best from Aggresso. They will also be doing all the upgrades, which the finance team and the ICT team have had to do up to now. And to be honest, they've not always carried them out very regularly, and that's one of the reasons that our system's fallen behind and we're in the position we're in now. So that means that in future we'll avoid that additional staff resource. So, as the report shows, we did consider some other options, such as not doing anything, which was quickly ruled out, looking at another different supplier, but we haven't got capacity to do that, and some other options with Unit 4, but they were ruled out for the reasons shown. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Questions? Thank you. Councillor Allison.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at the time frame for implementation, it does seem quite ambitious. Have you had confirmation from the supplier that they can achieve that in that time frame? And has that been verified with other reference sites where they've done this work before? Thank you.
I've recently received a full statement of work from Unit 4, but that was only this week. And I've not had time to go through it in detail yet. But they have told me that at other sites they've done it in as little as 2 months. I think the issue isn't Unit 4's capacity to implement the upgrade and the new software, it's our capacity to do the testing that's needed before we roll it out.
You didn't answer the second part. Have you checked that, or I don't know, when I've been involved in these things, you go to other sites, get references as to how that supplier performed and did they deliver on time? What were the risks and issues that you encountered? Thank you.
I've not done that yet, but don't forget we are already with Unit 4. It's not an unknown entity, but I will talk to some other sites.
Councillor Finesse.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to move the recommendation, but I've got a question as well. Does this cost include the move to cloud, please?
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
Councillor Chapman.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, anything that, any system that will help out the impedance we've got in the finance department at the moment, and will help to overcome the staff shortages and the workload that they've got, is absolutely vital, and I'll second this.
Councillor O'Brien, question?
Yes, just a question, Chair. To avoid this additional sum being a burden on council taxpayers in future years, are we able to use the same mechanism to make a contribution from capital to offset the amount?
No, we wouldn't be allowed to do that because this is a revenue cost, and capital reserves such as capital receipts can only be used for capital expenditure.
It was moved by Councillor Finesse and seconded by Councillor Chapman. Is there anybody else who wishes to make any comments? Councillor Allison, you'd like to come back, yes?
Yeah, I have raised this with Karen sort of before the meeting. I think that the issues that you've got around the notification from your IT vendor, in this case, the person supplying the IT support, is quite poor. There is nothing that should be a surprise to you in products coming to their end of life, i.e. the SQL server licenses. And I just wonder how in the future these kind of situations can be avoided, because you've had Aggresso as a package since 2004, and really in most situations, especially in public procurement, you should really be testing the market every sort of 10 to 15 years. to see that you're getting value for money from the applications that you're using, and they've left you with no option to do that. So I'm just hoping that, and I've spoken to Karen and you've said that you'll take this up with them, that can be taken up with them in the future, that we aren't left, if you like, exposed like this, that we've got to extend the licence of a product that is coming to its end of life, because what that means and what all Microsoft will do will just make sure that those servers have security patches on them, and that's not secure. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I have discussed this obviously with the ICT manager, and I will take it up with her again. But one of the things she did say was that there are things that they can do to the server. That server only has Aggresso on it. It's not a public-facing server, so they can make it more secure. But obviously they will install the patches until then. With regard to testing the market, even if we had known 12 months sooner that this was coming to an end and that it might be a good time to test the market, I wouldn't have had the capacity in the finance team to do that work. And I did look, and as I say in the report, there are similar pieces of software. And my intention would be that, in 18 months' time, when I hope I've got a full team, well before this 3-year period ends, that we start to think about doing that sort of an exercise.
I think sometimes it's good just to let your suppliers know that you are, it's like what you do at home, isn't it? You go and you look for, well, you can't look for a good energy price at the moment, but that's the sort of thing that you do so that you keep those suppliers on their toes and they know that they just aren't going to get that repeat business over and over again. Thank you.
Thank you. Point taken on that, I believe. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. Just to take Councillor Allison's point a little bit further, there's a real issue going to arise over Windows 10 in 2024 when that reaches end of life. And the problem is going to the next generation of Windows operating system means that many of the computers that Windows 10 currently runs on will be obsolete because the next version, Windows 11, won't in general run on many of those systems. And this could result in a very large capital outlay to maintain the security, in particular, of desktops and laptops in the ownership of the district council. And this, I think, is something that we need to be aware of going forward. And I think that goes for many other licenses as well associated with Microsoft. And I'm surprised that any of our suppliers are running with a license software dating back to 2013, because that does seem to be quite a long time ago. And I think there are later versions than 2016 of SQL, which suggests that we're only going to get 3 years of they're going to have to upgrade again. But if that's been done on the cloud, then we shouldn't see any difference in cost in that respect. And that would go for the servers as well, with a move to different operating systems that are going to happen in 2024.
Yes, so I'll raise Windows 10 with the ICT manager. I'm fairly sure they'll be aware of that. And I remember in the past, it might have been Windows 8, we had a similar sort of exercise where they planned to update all the equipment well before the end of that. With regard to the SQL server, as I've said at the moment, there's only Aggresso on it. Obviously, once we've gone to the cloud, we won't need to use that server for that purpose. So we will make a saving or we'll reuse it for something else.
Thank you. So it has been proposed and seconded. Anybody else wishing to make any comments? With that, I'd like to go to the vote. All in favour, please show. It's unanimous. Thank you. On to item 13, Gypsy and Traveller provision of temporary sites. We should bring in Tim first to...
Excuse me, Chair.
Hello, sorry.
Could I ask for 5 minutes? To use the facilities.
Okay, then we'll have a 5-minute break. Thank you. There's nobody missing next to the side of you who were here earlier that are... No, I think we're all present and correct. Okay, then we'll continue the meeting. Thank you. Item 12, Gypsy and Traveller provision of temporary sites. I will go to Tim for the report first. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Well, on Tuesday I had the pleasure of bringing 3 reports to Council which members welcomed and happily debated and found it fairly easy to come to a decision, and I know this report is not the same as those. The report actually follows a workshop session that was held with members on the 23rd of June 2022, when members looked at a list of all land holdings that the Council has an interest in, greater in area than 0.1 of a hectare. And tried to consider which of those sites might be best used as temporary accommodation for gypsies and travellers to whom the council owes a homelessness duty. It's worth remembering and restating that we do have a statutory duty towards those 2 families to provide them with suitable temporary accommodation in lieu of a permanent site being available. At that workshop, members considered that full list, and they asked that the matter be brought before an early meeting of council so that a formal decision could be made with the proper decision-making arrangements in place on the future of temporary sites in this district. They also asked that the list be simplified somewhat because there were sites on there such as the Cromford Mill Pond, which are clearly unsuitable for occupation in this way. And they asked that sites such as ponds, cemeteries and burial grounds, allotments and play areas be excluded from the list. So what we've ended up now with is a cleansed list, if that's the correct term to use, with a reduced number of sites on it. So that's the list that's contained in Appendix 1 to this report, and which members are asked to consider to see if they can decide which sites might be suitable for occupation on that temporary basis. Just for information, at this point in time, the 2 families referred to in the report are on sites in Matlock and Ashbourne. Members will recall that at the time of the workshop, the one family was on the site at Sudbury. Some members will know they then moved to Doveridge and subsequently to Ashbourne. As I said before, the council is legally obliged to provide the 2 families with suitable temporary sites. That's a requirement of homelessness legislation. That was explained in some detail at the workshop by Rob's colleague, Simon Benyon. It's worth bearing in mind in making these considerations that until such time as any alternative sites are identified and agreed, officers have no authority to move the travellers from the 2 sites which they are currently occupying, if that's what members would like to happen. In the event that we were to go to court to remove identified homeless families from a site, we have a legal obligation to identify a suitable alternative. And if we're unable to do that, we can't move them on. Members have been quite clear that they don't wish officers to make this decision on their behalf, that they want it to be a matter that's considered by members and agreed by members, and hence you've got the long list, slightly shorter but still quite long list in front of you today in order to make those decisions. Therefore, the report makes 2 recommendations, that suitable sites are determined and identified, and that a means of authorising movement between those sites is also determined. Members might recall back in July last year, a report was put before you which suggested some sites and which suggested a means by which the decisions could be made about moving the families between sites. Those recommendations were not acceptable to members at that time, not acceptable to council at that time, but nevertheless it might be something that members would like to consider in trying to make those decisions. That's all I intended saying in the introduction to the report. I think all members are fully aware of what the task required of them is. I'm happy to try and help guide members with factual information rather than opinion, and Rob's here to help in that respect as well. But really, I'm afraid it's over to you, members.
Okay, so with that in mind, and as as Officer Braun has just actually stated that we have got a long list. The first way around, and I'm going to do it just to show that we are considering and everybody is looking at everything that is in that list. I'm going to go through the alphabet of it and go to the ward members of those wards to see if there is any site in front of them that they wish to put forward, and then we will debate on that after the time. Councillor Burford, you seem to have an issue?
should we not be having questions first before we do anything like that on the report?
Okay, you've got a question on the report. Okay, fine, yeah. You've got a question about the report. Okay, fine.
Yeah, thank you. So, my first question is why does the report repeatedly mention one or two sites, one or two, as temporary tolerated sites, when it's clear that we have a duty to two completely separate families who, as far as I understand it, are unlikely to live in harmony with each other? That's the first question.
Thanks, Chair. Previously, the two families have occupied one site together. That's no longer the case, and it's the understanding of officers that they're unlikely to want to occupy one site together. My advice to members would be that if only one site was identified and we were asked to move one or other of the traveller families to that one site to co-occupy it, there's not a great deal of chance of that occupation being sustained. It's likely that one or other of them would move to a site of their own choosing.
So I do have another question. So I'd like to know why we've been presented in this report with this cleansed list, which clearly includes totally unsuitable sites. If I could just point out, you know, Hawley's Park in Matlock. We've got the car park here at our own headquarters, and that's not to mention Nabhall Lane, which was unanimously rejected by this council, and quite rightly so. So, you know, the question is, why is this cleansed list? Why does it include sites that are clearly not going to happen?
Thank you, Chair. Members were quite clear, have been quite clear for some time, that they want to make this decision rather than officers to make it. When we had the workshop, there were a number of types of use that were identified by members as unsuitable, and those types of use have been taken out. Officers have taken nothing else out. The list, remember, is available for not just you to see here tonight, but for members of the public to see online and to be aware of the sites that the District Council has an interest in. Some of these are leasehold, some of them are a freehold, and there's one or two that we just have rights over. Now, in my opinion, there are clearly sites on here that are unsuitable for use, but that decision is for members to make now.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Mr Burford. Can I just ask if you'll speak closer into the mic, because I do believe some of the others are having a bit of a problem hearing.
Right, is that okay? I've got three questions actually. The first one is, if Matlock Station car park is approved as a temporary site tonight, and given that the family presently occupying it wish to remain, is there a maximum period for their stay? In other words, how long is temporary? Officers previously suggested up to 8 weeks.
That also is for members to determine. There isn't a period that I can tell you that is correct on that respect, Councillor Burford.
Right, okay. The second question is, the report mentions one or more temporary sites that are required, but surely we need, say, at least two for the known families, and then, say, two more to accommodate any further traveller families who successfully claim homelessness. How many extra sites do you think we need for that purpose, just in case that some family does come forward and claim homelessness?
Thank you, Chair. I don't think either Rob or I are aware of any other family that might do that. Bear in mind that there has to be a local connection as well. We are aware of travellers who travel in the district on a regular basis, and I'm not aware of anybody who's likely to make a claim in respect of homelessness. Bear in mind that in order to be considered to be homeless, and Rob knows more about this than me, but bear in mind that in order to be considered to be homeless, they have to have no land on which they're legally entitled to place their caravans. Many travellers, most travellers, have sites that they return to in the wintertime from which they base themselves and travel during the summer. That is a semi-nomadic lifestyle. There are some travellers who are on the road all the time, and we've got two families here who have no site which they're entitled to go back to. I'm not aware of any others, Councillor Buff, and I don't think that's a strong likelihood.
Thank you. The third question is, referring to the Code of Conduct of the Caravan Occupiers, Appendix 2, can I ask if we can add after chopped down or damaged trees near the site, a clause about importation, because a lot of these travellers tend to do tree surgery works in their spare time or during the day to make money, of course, and they bring all the products of that work back to the site, particularly in Matlock Station car park, where there's a huge heap, and several heaps of rotting vegetation, which has to be moved, presumably at some stage, by the district council. Can some clause be added about that, and about fires as well, because obviously they do tend to burn this rubbish from time to time, and even cook food on some of it. So.
There is a bit in there about fly tipping. It mentions that fly tipping will be dealt with separately. We currently have an outstanding summons for a particular traveller, not a member of either of these two families, in relation to a fly tipping incident, should he ever return to the area. So we do deal with that. It is perfectly possible to add clauses into this. This is not the defined code of conduct that must be used in all circumstances. It's an example of one. I would express some caution about banning fires on traveller sites completely, because that just won't happen on any traveller site. They do light fires. If they cause damage through them, that's a different matter. If they cause nuisance through them, that's a different matter. But banning fires as a matter of course might be a recipe for conflict.
Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. A lot of residents have contacted me, Tim, of these sites, and they're astonished at some of the massive areas which are totally unsuitable, and it should have been condensed a bit more, really, to a realistic, where these aren't realistic, a lot of these sites, and we all know that, and the public know that, and the public have been, like, got hold to this and think they're going to, same as where I am, pitch up on Millennium Garden and things like that, or pitch up on children's play areas and that. Yeah. You know, residents have been a bit upset about it. I mean, I think this list should have been condensed more than what it is now. It's very, very, a lot of them are not realistic, are they?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd agree with the comment that there are lots of sites on here that are unsuitable. However, that is what members wanted presenting to them. So that's what you've got.
We are going to concise this list down through what we're going to do tonight. Okay, thank you, Councillor Slack. Councillor Hughes. I thought you put your hand up. Oh, sorry. Councillor O'Brien, sorry.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Could we be told where and when the council took a decision that it did not want officers to come forward with a recommendation as to suitable sites?
This occasion on which that was debated was at the council meeting in July last year, I think the 8th of July from memory, when there was an officer recommendation put forward of 7 sites, which council decided not to debate.
Well, with respect, Chair, that wasn't the question. We were told that the council had taken a decision that it didn't want officers to make a recommendation. Could we hear when that decision was made?
That's very much the impression that I got and the Chief Executive got at the workshop, Councillor O'Brien.
Do you consider a workshop to be a meeting of the council?
No, it's not a meeting of the council, but I am an instrument of the council and try to do what council has asked me to do, and that's what we were asked to do.
Chair, I'd like to just clarify here, because Councillor O'Brien asks an important question. The answer to it is that officers take direction in any number of forms, which is not just by virtue of decisions of the council, but by listening and consulting with members, formally and informally. So the paper you have in front of you tonight is a result of that consultation. Excuse me. So that's the reason why you have what Tim has presented to you this evening. As Tim says, it's a matter for the council to make decisions now on the information that's presented. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Morley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just for clarification, please, Mr. Braun, I just want to be sure.
we have got a duty of care to traveller families in law. Did I understand just now that because the two traveller families have had a fallout, then we're now looking for two sites because they won't live on one site together? Was that correct, or did I mishear?
That's broadly correct, Councillor Morley. There might be any number of reasons why two sites might be better than one, but I don't believe that one site would be sustainable if that was what the decision of the council was. We could try and implement it, but I'm just warning you as to what I think will probably happen.
Councillor Chapman.
Thanks, Chair. I'd just like to bring into consideration the sites that are designated for national park areas. There are 2 points which arise from nominating area sites within the national park, and the first one is the national park's first core purpose, which is protection and enhancement of the landscape, which is governed by something known as the Sanford Principle, which says that in the case of any disputes concerning sites, planning, etc., the landscape must always take priority. And also in the National Planning Policy Framework, great weight is given to the fact that the national parks of this country are of the highest designation of protection for the landscape. So if anything sort of arose dispute-wise for those, I think that would be strong reasons to discount national park sites.
Councillor Hobson.
Thank you, Chair. Just a clarification. In the Code of Conduct, are you saying that this is a work in progress? Because there's nothing about dates for how long people would stay on there. And at the very bottom it says you could be evicted immediately if you break any of these conditions. Is that a realistic thing that could happen?
When we say evicted immediately, that would mean take eviction action, which involves going through the courts. Nobody's going to turn up and turf them off on that particular day. In relation to how long they should stay on any one site, if we were dealing with negotiated stopping for people passing through, the normal rule will be no longer than 28 days to avoid the requirement for planning permission. We're not dealing with that situation. We're dealing with two families who reside in the area on one place or another. It's worth remembering that whatever you decide tonight, these families will exist in the area and will continue to be in the area in one place or another. And that's just a reality. It's not a matter of principle or what we would like it to be. It's a reality.
Councillor Gamble. Yeah.
Sorry about that. So I would like to go back to this issue of when it was decided that we didn't want officers to make any decisions, because when that decision was made last summer, my memory was, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I may remember this incorrectly, but my memory tells me that Councillor Morley said that he wanted the temporary stopping places to be discounted because it would, what was it? No, what was the actual word? But he said it would concentrate the mind of officers on delivering Napole Lane. I think that, I'm just wondering how that was interpreted as we don't want officers to make decisions anymore.
To be fair, the whole purpose of the recommendation was for council to make a decision, not for officers to make a decision. In terms of recommendations, I've got to the point where I'm not sure what members want. The only thing that's left to do is to put the list before you, and that was explained in some detail at the workshop session. James has explained much more eloquently than I can the system by which we take direction, officers take direction from members, and that's very much the situation that officers feel they're in.
Okay, can I just say I would have very much liked the expertise of officers' input into this.
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know anything about many of the sites. I know something about Roseley, the station car park in Roseley. I know a bit about most of the sites in Matlock and Tansley. I know nothing about the Bakewell sites. I know nothing about the Ashbourne sites. I know nothing about the ones anywhere else, for that matter. I can't make a decision on any of those sites. And therefore, if I voice an opinion on that, whatever law it is, the way we have to be in full understanding of the full knowledge of the circumstances around a decision. So I don't see, and I dare say that would be true of any other councillor here. Therefore, I do not believe that we can actually make a decision on any of these sites, because anybody voting for example, for the land on Old Coach Road in Tansley, who knows where Old Coach Road in Tansley is? Thank you. Anybody else? I know where it is, I know Mr. Braun knows where it is because I asked him. But the issue is, do you know where the site is on Old Coach Road? You do. Good. Thank you, Mr. Staben. I do too, but it took a bit of finding, and we don't know where any of these are, apart from the ones perhaps in our own ward. So we can't vote on any of them because we don't have enough information to go by. Therefore, we can't proceed in this way. I suggest we go in a different way. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Councillor Allison.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to come back to the Code of Conduct and ask a question regarding the if any of these families do actually get evicted from the sites because they've contravened some of the terms of this Code of Conduct. What is our responsibility to them then if they get evicted? Where will they go? What happens to them then? And do we still have that homeless duty towards them? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So, with any householder who purposefully makes themselves evicted, as it were, from accommodation, that tends to lessen the statutory requirement to help them through homelessness. But we still have a duty to provide temporary accommodation. That's the same whether you're a traveller or not, and we have to take into account the needs, the vulnerabilities, etc., of the people involved. So we would end up back at square one and still having to provide some form of temporary accommodation. That couldn't be bricks and mortar because of the cultural aversion to bricks and mortar, and we would be challenged and lose in the courts on that basis. So you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, I say.
Thank you for that. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Let me try and give some context to this, if I may. There's a lot of criticism that this authority has failed in its duties to find a permanent site. The simple reason for that is that nobody wants these people. We've gone out to advert for land over the past, decade. I recall Roger Yarwood, previous Director of Planning of this authority, at a planning meeting last month said he tried 20 years ago and failed. So the simple fact is that wherever we try to put these two families, and I do concur with what Tim says, they would not sit nicely in one place together, that is the enormous hurdle we get. So the context of me coming in as leader was to try and crack this problem, if you want to put it that way. And so I asked him if he could put sites forward that were possible for consideration. And those were the 4 sites that you know of. And the method is that we propose a site. It's not the chosen site, it's a proposal. And then it has to go through a number of hoops. The second hoop, of course, proved with the external consultants that it was simply not worthwhile and far too expensive to pursue. So I readily said, well, we'll obviously have to drop that. So there's none of these sites here where the public have misread, if I may put it that way, that any member is asked to suggest on another member's ward. So Chair was about to explain to you the conversation from the pre-brief this afternoon. And rightly or wrongly, we thought it best that we go through each ward and ask Well, that's the thought. So,
Chair, as a point of order, are we in question or in debate?
The thought is that
No, we're not in debate. It was a question.
Excuse me, I'm just...
Okay, okay, point
The thought
taken.
was that we thought the ward member would know their area best to make a suggestion on their ward. That was a simple thought. Going back to the point of officer delegation, it would not be supported. It could not be supported last year at the July meeting. Our group would not support it because there's a history of where these families have settled. And therefore it's
Chair,
felt very
can
strongly...
we have the question, please?
Right, okay, right. Just, can we...
Can I just finish, Chair?
Just, Gary, Councillor Purdy, I do beg my pardon. I would call for something. I know you wanted to come in with others have. Could you ask a question if you've got one, and then I will come back to you to have a speak as debate. No question. Councillor Waitman, question.
Yeah, obviously on my pad today I've had quite a few nasty emails. I hope the people are watching tonight, and they're all aimed at Tim. Now, what I'd like to get over is Tim is only doing a job. And I want everybody here to remember that. He's only doing a job. You know, you shouldn't be taking it out on him. It's not fair. He gets paid to do a job, and we make the decisions. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Lees, question.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just on the code of conduct, basically, we've got this list of you must and you must nots. When is the time right to enforce this code of conduct? Because as I read this list, the traveller families that we have at the moment, there's not one item on this list of code of conduct that's been adhered to. So I just wondered what the time frame is to bring into force this code of conduct, even if it's temporary or tolerated, whatever, because at this moment in time, not one item on this list has been adhered to with the families we have. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chair. Well, when an alternative site is identified, you've heard from Rob to say that we have to have some temporary site to move them to, and at the moment, there's not one identified.
Councillor Burford, did you have another question? Yes, okay, thank you.
Going back to right at the beginning of this agenda item, Chair, you said that you were going to, before any questions were asked, you said that you were going to ask each of the ward members. Now, where does it say in that report that that was going to happen? Because none of us, I'm assuming none of us knew that that was going to happen, and it seems completely out of order to me to suddenly thrust that at us and expect us to be able to make some comments. And may I just say that I am sure that none of us here, none of us are blaming Mr. Braun, for heaven's sake. We're not. Nobody's doing that. And, you know, I hope those people that are listening tonight realise that he is an officer of the council and he's doing a job of work. And I mean, for what it's worth, the position that we've got in is of our making. Your making, I'm afraid.
Through the chair. So, members, you've had these papers for the last week to prepare for the meeting. The chair has the discretion around how the meeting will work. And she told you at the start of the debate. And that's the point. The chair has the discretion to run a debate in the way that they consider fit. That's what your constitution says. There are no rules around how that will work. I think that the nature of the issue in front of you, given the criticisms that have been levelled at this authority previously around transparency, the chair took the view that it would be beneficial to actually have a conversation around how it played out in every area listed in Appendix 1 so that everybody could see what the thoughts were around that particular area. You're all representatives of every part of this district. You know your wards well. It was an opportunity for you to say what your thoughts were. It wouldn't bind you, it would just give you an opportunity to have your say. That was the chair's intention. It wasn't intended to trip anybody up. You all know where you represent. and that was the point of it. But the point is, you come prepared for a debate. You come prepared to make representations on behalf of the wards that you represent. There's nothing out of order in what the chair has proposed in doing that. It's consistent with the rules, and it would be probably, to my mind, what people watching this would expect to see.
I'm just going to add a little bit more to that, because obviously it says recommendation. The members determine sites contained within District Council's ownership in Appendix 1, suitable for temporary sites. So we've got to come forward with lists. And as Councillor Hughes did actually say, he didn't feel he could put a site forward in an area, a different area of ward, of somebody else's. So that was my idea. I've sat here and I sat reading all this and gone through it time and time again to felt that it was given a choice. This is a not full binding. These are just putting an idea of these areas from the ward members off this list, and then we go back to the drawing board to see what the benefits are. We might not come up with any list. It's not trying to jump on and catch you all out. It's trying to do what is actually stated on this item 1, recommendation 1. It says choose sites off the Appendix 1. So what difference is it doing? And as I felt it was easier to do it via wards. Councillor Slack, do you wish a question?
Yes, Chair. Gary's perfectly right when he said we've been here before, we've put these sites forward and they've not materialised. We've tried very hard for over a year, for many years. I can remember a planning meeting where we got all the site fixed up at Watery Lane, Aspin. It all collapsed because outside forces came in and stopped it. But at the end of the day, the travellers will decide where they're going, because we can come up with a site and put it forward, but they probably won't go there. I mean, they go where they want to go, the travellers, don't they, really? We advise them to go there, but we can't make them go there, if you know what I mean. So it's really, we should have more probably input from the travellers, really, where they want to really go. Probably, maybe. But that's one.
I don't think there was a question, but the one thing I would like to just come back at you with that one is the fact is that we all say, okay, if there is a site, they'll choose and go where they want, because as we've seen, that is sometimes what they do. But the thing is, we have a duty to show that we are proactively doing this. We are actually at this meeting now to show that for no want of anything, we're here representing our wards. These are lists there. And so we're going to look at it, and if there's something does come forward and they are offered this site and they don't take it up, we can't be taken to say that we haven't looked at it. We haven't tried our best to do what we are doing. And that's the biggest thing that's coming out of all this, whereas we are slowly getting threatened to the fact that we could end up going to court over not fulfilling our duties. Thank you.
Yeah, I take that on board, Chair.
Thank you.
I agree with you, we should go for all the sites.
Question, Councillor Hobson.
Yes, thank you. Going back to my original question, and after what Councillor Lees said and Rob's explained, so basically the code of conduct, if they get evicted, we would still have to find them somewhere to go anyway. So the code of conduct is a bit pointless, really. Do you think?
The code of conduct would apply to all temporary encampments. It's not just to these two families. Rob's explained the situation as regards homelessness, and clearly the long-term solution to that is to find a suitable permanent site.
Councillor Burford, question.
Yes, I'm wondering when we're going to debate the amendment from Councillor Gamble, because that could change the situation in the debate tonight.
Well, that's that. I don't believe the amendments ever come forward yet, and I don't believe we've gone into debate. Sorry? We haven't gone into debate. So we're not. So, okay, so a point there. Thank you. Councillor Hughes, did you have any more questions?
I just wanted to ask if we could continue with your approach, basically.
Okay. Shall we try that then? Good.
Can I raise a point of order, Chair, please? How do you intend to cope with areas where the ward member is not present?
Where the ward member's not present. Then obviously that will have to be omitted.
I would like to speak in where the ward member is missing, if it's in my county council. I have a right to do that, thank you.
Yeah, I suppose you can. Everybody can have a say as what they want to say, but whether it's taken to in, it's like anything within a debate. You have to hear other people's opinions and ideas or thoughts to these areas. Okay.
Chair, do you want me to move an extension to the meeting? Yes, please. Okay, so I'll move an extension to the meeting until the business is finished.
Councillor Lees, all those in favour, please show. Against? Abstentions? I understand. Yeah. Time is an essence. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Ashbourne. So, Councillors Donnelly and Councillor Lees, there are sites on there. Is there any sites that are on this list that you feel would be appropriate? Okay, let's just go to the sites. Are there any sites that you feel are suitable to accommodate on a temporary basis?
Chair, I wish there was. There's nothing. Myself and other ward members have looked round Ashbourne, both central and the outskirts. There's nothing that's tolerated or that's suitable in our ward at all. That's what I'm going to say.
Councillor Lees?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to second Councillor Donnelly's opinion on that. We've looked hard and agreed we've got to find somewhere, but there is nowhere on this list in Ashbourne that is suitable. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, Ashford in the water. Now, considering, I believe that this is actually in the Peak District National Park, and from what Councillor Chapman was stating, should that even be considered? So, point on that, we do not consider because of it being Peak District. No, I didn't say it was. I was just looking in general. Is that right?
Chair,
oh, sorry.
There is nothing, nowhere in Ashford you could put caravans.
Okay.
They're into site big enough.
Okay. Then we come to Atlow. Now, obviously, Atlow, I believe, comes under Holland, and I don't believe we've got... Sorry. Councillor Rose.
I wasn't quite sure if it came into Holland or into Carsington Water, but did James say it's Holland?
Mm. Holland. The one site there that I believe... Councillor Lees, sorry.
Yes, Chair, this site is in Atlow. It's down a very narrow track and it's a woodland site. It isn't a suitable site.
Now we come to Bakewell. Now there are quite numerous amounts on there, but again, this states that it's Peak District National Park, so I would have said that those are not determined under that ruling.
But Chair, on a point of information,
Yeah.
can I ever give a point of information? The National Park Plan does not prohibit traveller and gypsy sites within the National Park. It says in exceptional circumstances they can be allowed, but that applies to permanent sites. So in principle, there is not an issue with traveller sites being located within the National Park.
Okay, that's fine. So Bakewell. So I'll go to the Bakewell ward members. Is there any site that you feel that is suitable or we would like to put forward to continue on with the look?
Firstly, I think we need to confirm whether they are allowed in the Peak District National Park. If they are, they then would have stringent planning to go through. would be extremely costly. The sites that identified, some are leasehold, so if we put them on where we were leasehold, it would be a breach of the lease. On the agricultural centre, has the agricultural committee been contacted? Are they for it? Or have they even been contacted? That would need some clarity. The small area on the ABC that they say is a freehold is right next to the market, the livestock market. Would that mean we'll have to remove the market, find another site for that? The Rutland Recreation Ground, there's covenant on that. All the other areas haven't got vehicle access to. Don't think they'd be very good on the back gardens. And there's no others that have got vehicle access really. Unless we put it on one of the car parks in town, but then the financial loss there would be incredible. Thank you.
Yeah, obviously there is no site in Bakewell, only the ABC if it's permitted. The other sites, you just can't put them on.
Madam Chair, can I, a point of clarification? Are we talking about temporary, tolerated and permanent sites looking at this list? Or are we still looking at temporary or temporary, right?
Councillor Sutton.
I'd just like to say, Chair, I second everything that Councillor Hill has said. Thank you.
Have you got any other sites that you wished about? Okay, thank you. Moving on, Baslow. Hobbs. Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, Chair. You've already had a statement from the parish clerk from Baslow and Bubnell Parish Council. If I could just add to that and agree with that, this car park is in the centre of the Nether End in the village, surrounded by small businesses. It's totally not a suitable site whatsoever, and it's in the Peak Park.
Oh, Bonsall. Anybody representing?
Chair, it's myself. It's the only space available for children and recreation. It's a small square of grass and shrubland, so it is not suitable.
Okay. And again for Cromford, because I believe that's...
We can't even get housing into Cromford. There's not enough space anywhere, so sorry, no.
Okay. I'll move over to Councillor Murphy. You're Cromford. Do you represent Cromford as well? Same position? Okay, thank you. Darley-Dale.
Madam Chair, yes, looking at this list, I mean, most of the land holdings we have in Darley-Dale are on estates, so I don't think they are acceptable to move them onto there. I mean, the only other one we've got is Bent Lane, which is up on the moor, which is a really remote part of Darley-Dale. So I cannot put forward any site in Darley-Dale.
Councillor Statham.
Yes, I agree with Councillor Atkins. None of the 11 sites on this list will be suitable for a temporary or a permanent stopping site. So I think we'll have to find somewhere else. Thank you.
Ian. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I've undertaken some limited consultation with residents of Eam and the parish council in Eam. Perhaps you could tell me to start with, where is land and buildings? Could someone please tell me what that is?
So it's Hawks Hill Road car park. So
Well, I understand the car park. Could someone tell me what the land and buildings is? Well, I'm asking the officers.
I had hoped to make the mapping system available today. It takes an inordinate amount of time to load up. It is now loading. The way that land interests are registered within the system is that different parcels of land are named different things, and it is quite correct that the land and buildings is the toilet block.
The toilet block is leased to Eam Parish Council, so I'm rather surprised that that is included on the list. And I agree with the residents and the Parish Council that the car park surrounding the toilet block is not suitable either.
Great Longston. Councillor Gamble.
Right. I did ask earlier actually what the Great Longston was, and it is literally a road going through an estate. There is absolutely, for you, Helen, I bet you know where this is. It's Grassdale Road and Croft Road and Edge Hill Road. Oh, right, yeah. So there's absolutely, I'm afraid, no way you could put them on a road.
Thank you for that. Hartington. Sir Chapman.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, Parsons Croft is an exceedingly small car park, quite a large proportion of which is in disrepair, with the walls have fallen down, etc. The entrance is through a quiet estate, a small estate, but a quiet estate, and the position of parking in Hartington being reduced even further is something that they shouldn't even be comprehended by the residents, but that would cause a lot of problems in Hartington, so that can't be considered.
Thank you. Hathersage. Councillor O'Brien.
Well, I haven't had the opportunity to discuss this with the Parish Council, but again, there's been some limited consultation with residents. I should say that their views on the list in general are unprintable. Certainly, I can't verbalise them, but I would support their view that none of the sites put forward here are suitable.
Board. Councillor Bright's not here, but looking at this, I do know the area, and it is a playing field, and we were saying that these areas weren't even going to be considered anyway in the shortened down list, I do believe. So we'll take that one. Master Montgomery. Sorry? It's in the middle of an housing estate. Thank you. As well. Master Montgomery. Councillor Morley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The identified area is a small grassed children's playground tucked away at the end of a row of houses in a cul-de-sac and probably wouldn't fit two vans.
Thank you.
I would say while I've got the mic,
yeah.
I already do have in my ward, Norbury, a traveller site, and I have had one there for 3 years. And it's land to the east of Grove Lane. There are 5 static caravans and 5 mobiles. 5 static dwellings and 5 mobiles, and 5 families who have become extremely good neighbours. Lest anybody think we're anti-travellers, please understand that we've been hosting these good neighbours for 3 years now in the Norbury ward, but there is nowhere else that I can find for these particular families. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Morley. And we move to Matlock. So we've got Councillor Burfitts.
I'm not going to be very popular, but I'm afraid I'm not playing your game tonight. We were not given any information.
I don't think we're playing any games, and I don't really think...
No, you're playing a game.
I don't really think we are.
I think you are.
If that's how you feel, then fair enough.
Yeah, that's how I feel. So, in view of that, I mean, I think the people of Matlock have been very tolerant of the site at the car park, the station car park. They've been very tolerant of that. We've got another site at Ashbourne where they are at the moment, and you're saying, Ashbourne members, that that's not suitable. So if and I suspect nobody else on this list is going to come up with a site, if and I say if we were to come up and say, well, as a temporary measure, maybe, because there haven't been serious problems at that one in Matlock, then we could end up with both families in Matlock, and that would be a recipe for disaster. So I certainly am not putting forward tonight any suggestions. What I think we should be doing is discussing this amendment, which I think is the sensible way forward.
Yeah. We've started this, so we're going to finish to the end. So you don't wish to put anything? No. Councillor Hughes, are you in the same?
No, I'm in a slightly different position from Councillor Burfoot. I would like to say that I'm going to apply the same criteria to my choice of sites in Matlock as the Ashbourne councillors have done in Ashbourne. And I'm sorry, I'm going to shrug my shoulders at this point, but I can't see any site that is at all appropriate for travellers in Matlock, just as the Ashbourne councillors couldn't find any site in Ashbourne that was appropriate. So I'm sorry about that, Sue. I thought your proposal was an excellent proposal. I really think that you did well to bring it forward, and I would be really happy to support it if we had support all around, but we certainly haven't. Now, can I just mention Councillor Morley in this respect, because Councillor Morley has been excellent in his support of the travellers on his site, and he tells me that the councillors, the travellers on his site are integrated into the community there and have helped in, for example, during the Serco dispute that we had with Serco, they organised the use of their trailers to transport village rubbish to the tip. So I'm sure that Councillor Morley had something to do with this. But so I would commend Councillor Morley's attitude towards the travellers, and I would also commend his attitude as a councillor, because I think he is fulfilling his role under the Code of Conduct as representing the people of his ward, but also more broadly representing the people of Derbyshire Dales. Thank you.
To Matlock Bath. Councillor Purdy. Okay.
Well, it's not a game. This is a serious issue. We've got two families here that are being pushed around and pushed around and pushed around. And I know that people don't like the lifestyle, but we have a duty at law. And it's our responsibility to go through all these sites to see if there's any possibility. I've accommodated, and blessed Councillor Joyce Pawley did accommodate them for two humanitarian reasons. I've spoke to Tim today and spoke to him several times about this, and what I wanted to say earlier, Chair, when I know it was questions, was in defence of Tim. And I'm pleased Councillor Wakeman said as much as well. Councillor Burfoot, it is not Tim's fault, this. This has been going on for donkey's years, and the simple expedient is nobody wants these people. So I'd like to find people outside this room who can come up with a suggestion as to where they should go. We are keeping our fingers crossed that the latest offer from a gentleman, a landowner, will provide us with that permanent site. I've asked the Chief Exec to go out to advert again, because as Tim states, ideally we need two sites. But let's try and get one at least first. So I'll suggest the top part of the Tampa Road car park. I would suggest Artist Corner, but I'd want further discussions on that, Tim, as to where exactly. And I'd also like you to look at Tinter's Yard. The caveat there is that I would want further discussions to go before it's firmed up. So these are suggestions as to possibilities.
Councillor Murphy.
I'm happy to second Councillor Purdy.
Thank you. Middleton.
So, as regards the Millennium Gardens, I would say that that definitely isn't ideal. As regards the land to the northwest of the cemetery, on New Road and also northwest. Oh, sorry, that's a repetition. So yeah, as regards that, there is land there available that could be suitable, but I would like to ask members to bear in mind of the fact of the close proximity to the cemetery itself. Thank you.
Can I ask Tim on this one? The land northwest of the cemetery, is it the land which is at the side of the road, or northwest is another piece of land which you can't even get onto?
There are two parcels of land on the list.
Yeah.
They're different areas. It's both of them, Councillor Sack.
Yeah, one of them's not accessible by any route. It's a piece of land out in the fields. I think the one north of the cemetery has been earmarked for extension to the cemetery eventually. And it's a very, very, very exposed position. I don't think they go there. It's as bad as you can get anywhere. It's right on the pinnacle of the Vigelia, where you get all the north winds coming across. I wouldn't think they'd go there, would they though?
No, I mean, it perhaps could be suitable,
Yeah.
but whether for their suitability is a different question.
And we've got Northwood.
Chair, may I speak as County Councillor, because Councillor Buckler's not here. We've had representation from Northwood and Tinkersley Parish Council as to why the recreation ground isn't suitable. It's surrounded by houses. They've got the wildflower meadow. It's on a slope. It just isn't suitable. Down by Peak Rail at Harrison Way, that would have an impact on Peak Rail and the businesses down there, so I cannot support either of those.
Over Haddon.
One car park, Chair, and it's very close to the houses.
It's also in the Peak Park, and it's also, I don't know if the car park is, but it's very close to a site of specific, what do you call it? Yeah.
Thank you. Rowsley.
Can I speak again, Chair, as the County Councillor? We had two residents who spoke very eloquently this evening. We've also had statements from various other local people, including the Level Centre, which is an award-winning centre for learning disabled people. They have been there before. It has caused, as they have said, they've spoken really articulately about the problems that have been before, and I wish it would not keep being suggested as a suitable site, because it is not a suitable site. And if we can get through something tonight, it would be to get some sites off the list and not to keep bringing them round and round again.
Okay, thank you. Stony Middleton.
Yeah, that's me. This piece of land at the rear of Edgeview is very difficult to access, and it also floods over the brook, and it does get very wet, so no.
As County Councillor, I will also support Councillor Froggatt with that.
Thank you. And then we come to Tansley.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just say thank you to Councillor Purdy for being the first to make a generous proposal in his ward, and he made several. And to Councillor Hobson that I agree with her about the Roseley site, because I think it's indefensible both from the travellers' point of view and also from residents' point of view, because it's used as because of the local car parking in a very dark area. I just don't think it's suitable as a travellers' site. I mean, I do know that one. I don't know a lot of the others. In Tansley, can I just say one more thing before I go on to Tansley? Can I ask Councillor Purdy, if we don't come to any further sites tonight, is it possible for us to get together and discuss sites in the Matlock Bath area, so that because there is the issue that if they're all concentrated in the Matlock and Matlock Bath area, then there won't be any in the south of out south of the district, and that, I don't think that would be appropriate.
I have to say, Councillor, I find that impossible, because we're hearing tonight, the exercise of this tonight is to hear from all ward members. And as you can see, there's nobody else coming forward. So I don't see anything outside of our ownership, and that's what we're talking about here, our own land ownership, where we can consider other land, because that, of course, would be under private ownership. We've gone out to advert for the past, 8 years? Salloway's before, presently, I don't know what it is at the moment. We've got one possible site we're looking at, Rob's looking, and Tim looking very closely at that. We've gone out to advert again. So out of our list here, it's all private ownership land. So I just wonder how we, unless we go out to advert again and keep going out to advert, how we're going to get anybody to come forward with possibility of private land.
I wasn't thinking of that, I was thinking of this list really, and whether it was possible to prevail on other, we don't know what basically we don't know what the criteria that are being used to say there is no site available in, for example, Ashbourne. We don't know what the criteria that are being used by the councillors to make that judgment. All I have done in rejecting any Matlock site is using the same what I think are the same criteria. And I think there is, and you probably are aware of my private correspondence with Paul Wilson about travellers' sites, and I think there may be other options if we can prevail in some other way. It may be that we have to do that in some other way, but I'm concerned that we'll end up with very few or no suitable sites using this method. I'm just trying to find a way out.
I think the only alternative after this is compulsory purchase.
Well, maybe. I hope not.
But I'm always happy to discuss, of course.
Yeah. But going on to Tansley, quite genuinely, there are real issues with each of these sites. The land west of Old Coach Road is actually over a river, and the access to it is on a bridge. So, and it's in the Lumsdale Conservation Area, so it's not appropriate. Land on South Nottingham Road, there's a dispute over ownership of that. It's a recreational ground, and it's supported by HC14 in the local plan. It's probably owned by the church wardens, and it's been and there's a covenant on it. It's been there are restrictions on that. And of course, Nabhall Lane we found was not appropriate quite recently as a travellers' site. And the cost of bringing that forward as a temporary travellers' site would be high. So none of those sites really bears thinking about at this stage.
Thank you. Winster. Okay. Is there anybody who wants to make any representation? Councillor Statham.
Yes, Chair. I know Winster very well. I know the road itself. It's heavily populated around there, Leecroft Road. It's like the only estate there is in Winster, so I don't think that's suitable at all. Thank you.
Now we move to Wirksworth. Councillor Ratcliffe and Slack and
obviously Fanny Shores is a recreation ground for children. It's
No, those are suitable.
not suitable. No, they're not. No, I'd say they're not suitable, Mike. Car park at the Dale there, no, it's too tight up there anyway, it's not suitable. South east of the Optum Works, that's the one what's in dispute, isn't it, where the town council's put the ballards up to stop any entry. Is that the piece of land? Is that right, Tim? Land south east of the Optum Middleton Road.
Yes, I believe that is council site.
The one in dispute, like,
Well,
yeah.
I don't think it's in dispute. I
Well,
just
the
don't think,
entry's in
yeah.
dispute because it belongs to town council. So they say.
Well,
You say
the district council doesn't agree with that.
Yeah, Yokel's not in, is it? No. No. Old Lane, that's going to be the development land, isn't it? Some of the car park, and that's not suitable. East of the Old Lane is the one which is a planning application in for building lands, building Bowlers player fields, isn't it? Varmint Courts car park to the old people's home, and Gorsey Bank's recreation ground again. Suitable, are they?
Thank you, members, for letting us do that practical situation. So, just a few areas that were to be noted that could possibly be sites that we've got down. So, obviously these were recommendations, so now I'm going to ask Councillor Gamble if you would wish to put out what you...
Well, I don't know if anyone's had a chance to read this at all yet, but given have this, I don't think we could call this a resounding success, could we? I'm just wondering if people would like to put to the vote this idea of setting up a working group so we could actually start to come up with some criteria and start to assess these sites properly. I think the amendment is fairly self-explanatory.
Is somebody prepared to second that? Okay, thank you. I'm just going to move over some questions just to self. Councillor Morley.
No, Chair, I thought it was a great idea. I was going to second it. I have no questions, just a statement at the correct time. Thank you, Chair.
It was a question, really. I mean, I think this is a whole council issue, and I don't think having a working group with one person from each political group is just not going to work. I'm pleased you've come forward with something, Councillor Gamble, but I just don't think it would work.
What would you think would...
In Travellers, relationship and impact on amenities and settled communities, it's we've done it all. Why give our officers more to do?
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. I don't share the reservations expressed by some colleagues. What I would say, though, is that we've already taken a decision. This is in reference to the permanent site. We've already taken a decision that that process will be taken through as part of the local plan review. And what I don't want to happen is that we somehow get in the way of that process, that we allow our planning officers to get on with that.
And members from the larger locations, not the smaller locations, because I can't see that. I mean, the problem with smaller locations is that there are different pressures on them, and it's easier for the traveller site to be located in a reasonably large location, such as Matlock or Ashbourne. So I would very much welcome a working group that was made up of a small number of councillors from the locations where there was a possibility of a traveller site. So it's not it's not in a number of these other places that are too small really to support a traveller's site. And I think we've found working groups have worked in a number of different areas. I mean, Councillor Chapman will warrant how well the climate change working group has worked, and I know that other working groups have worked as well as that as well. So I ask the members to give it a chance. We don't have to spend a lot of time doing it. But if we could do this before the next council meeting and come to the next council meeting with a proposal that would then be put before all councillors, and that all councillors could get the chance to vote. Thank you.
I support this amendment, and I think it's a sensible way forward because of the situation that we find ourselves in. I'm just reading through it again. Maybe, Councillor Gamble, it should be more than one member, so we'd end up with very few people on this. Just thinking maybe one member from each of the, trying to work out how many that would be from each of the areas. Just widen it a bit more, because I think there is a possibility of going forward here. I really do. And, I'm going to take this opportunity to say that, we've got to do the right thing by these travellers. We really do have to do that. And again, I'm plugging the fact that the people of Matlock have been extremely tolerant. You'll see in the report that there have been very few complaints from Matlock people as opposed to Ashbourne.
Councillor Hobbs, did you wish to conclude? Oh, sorry, Councillor Bird.
This question for James, please. If I'm going to agree with this, I'd want it to be politically proportionate. I think that's according to our constitution.
There's no rules around proportionality for working groups unless council decides to make them politically proportionate. So the proposal before you doesn't make that reference. So if the proposal from Councillor Gamble is agreed, if you wanted to put that forward, you'd have to do that as an amendment, and then that would have to be voted on. Unless Councillor Gamble's prepared to accept political proportionality, she's prepared to accept that suggestion there to amend the motion.
I don't agree with the one, Councillor Gamble. I think that's not representative. I prefer, as Councillor Barefoot trying to allude to, I think it needs to be a different balance there. As we've always done proportionality, I think that's the best way forward. So I would go with that if you're happy with that. I wish you luck, because I don't know what you're going to find, what's not been found over 40 years.
Chair, if that has been agreed, as we know from Tuesday night, there's only two numbers that actually work in terms of proportionality, so it'll either have to be 11 or 17. I would recommend 11. The 17 doesn't really work for a working group, so that's up to you members, but that's how the numbers work out best.
Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not opposed to Claire's amendment, but I think Peter O'Brien's come up with the best suggestion, really, to introduce in the local plan and planning officers to look for a site. We've got to look outside now. These sites, we've more or less turned them, most of them down, haven't we, already, the council sites. So we've got to look outside. Yeah, we advertise again, but if in the local plan, if we can identify areas which the officers consider is suitable for the travellers, as Councillor Barefoot said, it's important that travellers' views are put forward. If it's acceptable to them, these different sites, private sites we come up with, we may have to use compulsory purchase to get these sites, but I think that's the way forward, really, to go. To officers, planning officers, to be involved in it, and with the local plan and that, so forth. So, but I still think, I'm not opposed to your amendment. Oh dear, Claire. Yeah.
I don't think the local plan is going to find temporary tolerated stopping places, is it?
It'll find some, but...
Will it, Tim?
Well, as I've been brought in, my comment would be what this report is about is finding something now. Councillor O'Brien is quite right in the sort of planning purity of things, that permanent sites will be brought forward. It might be possible to bring forward negotiated stopping places within that process. But we have travellers on car parks now.
That's what I was thinking. I was
yeah.
thinking this group could maybe move a little more agilely.
Councillor Hughes.
Okay, thank you. Just speaking as the seconder, rather than have full proportionality or phrasing it in that way, what I would ask is that we have representatives of Ashbourne, Matlock, Matlock Bath, Wirksworth, Darley-Dale as the major areas that will be covered, and that would bring in a Labour Party member, a Labour group member, Liberal Democrat members, and several Conservative members. So I think we would get something approaching proportionality in that way, and but it would also allow us to cover all the major conurbations in Derbyshire Dales, and would leave out those areas which we've already agreed tonight, I think, are not appropriate. So would that find your support?
Chair, since James stated those numbers, that's frightened me to death, because we're now talking about loading officers again, and I really don't see what this is going to achieve. And I start out with my first premise. I really don't see what this is going to achieve. What is your criteria? We've gone through this for umpteen years. We've gone to advert. We've exhausted tonight. There's only me and Councillor Grettis come in any possibility of alternative sites. I'm sorry, I just don't see what it's going to achieve. So purposely, if it had some purpose, I would support it.
Well,
but in analysing it, I can't see any useful benefit in it, so I'm sorry I can't support it.
Okay. Councillor Atkin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering if there was any sites in Ashbourne that were to be considered. Can the council have site visits so we can actually have a look at the sites themselves? Or broadly, more generally, site visits? Yeah. Yeah, if there was any sites in Ashbourne or similarly anywhere else, you know, maybe we ought to go around in a bus and have a site visit to see how suitable these sites are as councillors.
Would be.
Okay, so this proposal is on the table. It's been proposed and seconded. I do feel that everybody's had the say in way or not. So, sorry, Councillor Burford.
Yes, it just occurs to me that in order to get some progress on this, I think if we had a working group, the working group could eliminate most of these sites right away. And then we could perhaps have a site visit to different places where there's any vague possibility of an acceptable site. Because as we went being through all these lists, I mean, most of them seem to be recreation grounds or on housing estates or whatever, and totally and utterly unsuitable. So you can prune this list down to, you know, probably 20 or 30 at the most, rather than 133.
Right, okay, so I think we'll go to the vote on the proposal that has been put. So all those in favour of looking to have a working group to do this, please show the hands. Councillor Wakeman, have you got your hand up? Sorry, can you? Against?
There's the faulty votes, Chair. So in that situation... Sorry, there's an equality of votes, Chair, so in that situation you have the deciding vote. So on that basis the proposal falls according to the Constitution. So presently, Chair, there is nothing on the table for Council to decide, apart from the recommendations in the officer report, which say give consideration to Appendix 1, which members have done. There have been a couple of suggestions, but nothing confirmed. So, in the interest of people getting home and trying to resolve something tonight, it sounded like members were happy to progress conversations outside this meeting around the sites that were referred to positively in that reference to the ward sites. I'm not proposing that. I'm just setting out what my interpretation of what's being said was, but I can see hands flying up all over the place at the moment. So perhaps, Chair, you want to bring members in.
Thank you. Councillor Peter, sorry.
Thank you very much. And apologies for my silence, but I live in a National Park ward, and no sites in our ward were on the list. I think I accept Councillor Gamble's good intentions for the working group on that, and I see where she's coming from. But I agree with Councillor Brady. I think this has been discussed ever since I've been on council, so that's 12 years now. I'm sure the officers have a very good grasp of where they might want to go on sites that are not on this list. I think we actually have had a good, fair process today in dismissing an awful lot of sites, recreation grounds, playing fields, ponds, whatever they were, that I don't know. I was trying to look them up where they were on the iPad as we were going through. And I think the officers know their job about this. Rob and Tim are really good. They've done so much good work for our council. I'd like to propose that we let them continue this search, because it's in all our interests. They know the ground. They know what they're doing. And we dismiss those sites that we've all just been talking about tonight. And I'd like to propose that we give great confidence in our good officers to carry on this search, which then results hopefully in once again a member briefing, and which will lead to another full council debate. That's my proposal. Thank you.
May I second that proposal, Chair?
Councillor O'Brien.
May I second that proposal, Chair? I think it's an eminently sensible way forward. I take my cue from something which Tim Braun said earlier as to where he takes his cues and instructions from. I think he has those cues and instructions from the feeling of the meeting this evening. I'm sure that he's more than capable of using that expertise that and knowledge that he's heard this evening, and working with appropriate members to come forward with a reasoned proposal for an early meeting of the council. So I'm happy to second Richard's proposal.
Okay. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. I can't see how we can possibly give this back to Tim Braun. He's had 3 goes at this. We've turned him down 3 times. What's he supposed to do now? I don't understand what you're suggesting.
There's sites put on the table this evening. Have you lost the plot?
Councillor Purdy, can we let Councillor Hughes speak first, and then thank you.
Well, sorry, but I did thank you, but I don't know the sites in specifically. I mean, I have parked in one of them, and I feel that it would be difficult to drag a trailer up to that site. Artist's Corner is used by tourists, and putting travellers there would severely affect the business in Matlock Bath, I fear, and I wouldn't want to support that, Gary, because I think it would detract from the business in Matlock Bath, and I recognise that you were trying to get the process to work, and I think there is goodwill on this with us, but we've got to see it matched with our counterparts in similar sized towns, not in Matlock Bath, which is a severely constrained location and isn't really, I mean, I just don't see that it's really appropriate for travellers, but that's, be that as it may, the problem is we're not getting the buy-in from another part of the district where the travellers need to be. And until we get that buy-in, we can't move forward. If we get that buy-in, we can move forward. Well, I'm sorry, but there are places where they're tolerated. And we've heard Councillor Morley is an extremely good example where travellers are integrated into the community. and that was against opposition from the planning committee, but it went through on appeal, and now it's a successful and very neat looking site. And I despair, because I think we've failed again for the third time. I cannot see that we can put it back onto Tim. It's just not fair on him. What is he supposed to do now?
Councillor Fitzherbert, can I just clarify what you are proposing back to take to Tim?
Well, okay. Well, it's all. I can't really remember what I said now, but it's all recorded on the thing. But I think we all have sympathy around this room with the situation we're in, and we have dismissed many of the sites for whether they're recreation grounds, ponds, or whatever, next to cemeteries, etc., as per some of the criteria that's out there. And I was suggesting that our officers, Tim and Rob especially, have worked so hard on this to get us to this stage. We've now dismissed a lot of things transparently, which is great, and you know, there will be other sites that I suggested that they may or may not know that are not council owned, that may be suitable, perhaps, that they know better than us as ward members. They may even have had conversations, I don't know, and we're not part of that. And then we get briefed again when it's whittled down again, and then it comes to the full council debate that we've had so eloquently tonight. That's my suggestion.
Sorry, so the idea of those sites that were put forward as a maybe from members, you're not asking Tim to go back and look at those within what you're saying. Is that yes or no? Yes, you are, as well as
because they haven't been dismissed like
right,
everybody else who knows their wards really well has done.
Right. Okay. So that's what he's trying to achieve, putting something
And
back. Then
I'd like to say I'm thrilled that Councillor O'Brien has seconded it. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Burford.
Yes, I can't understand, Chair, why we're going through this exercise again, because was it last year or many months ago when officers put forward a list of 7 sites, as Tim has told us tonight. So they obviously did some research before they put that list together, and it was rejected by the majority group. We all voted for it, and they voted against it. That's what's caused a lot of these problems.
Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. I think Tim has done a remarkably good job, perfectly honest. I disagree with David. I think he's done very well. He's worked very hard, and Tim knows the travellers. He's got a relationship. And Rob also's got, you know, they know the travellers and what they want. And I think Tim's a man probably to get a site, get some more sites, and even if they're private sites, they can be put forward, and then we can look and go to the landowner and see if they're willing to sell. And if not, we may have to use compulsory purchase. I think we've got to move on this some way or other. So I do support Peter O'Brien and Richard's proposals. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hobson.
Chair, I'll be brief because I know time is going on now. I support Councillor Fitzherbert and Councillor O'Brien's proposal to consider those sites which have been put forward by members. If something else comes forward, that's great, but to be considered by all the council. You know, we have a humanitarian duty to these people, which we haven't fulfilled, but we also have a duty to our residents and our businesses. And you only need to read some of the things that people have written. And the final point I want to make, I didn't get in and say that I'm County Council for Darley Dale, but I know that Darley Dale particularly were unhappy, as were several other of my parish councils, that this came out with a week's notice on an agenda when parish and town councils haven't been able to meet to make a comment. And I really do feel that we have a duty to liaise with the people on the ground, our parish and town councils, and listen to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Yeah, just as a point of reassurance and clarification, I mean, I'm happy to support Richard's proposal because it's on the basis that our officers are informed by what they've heard this evening, not that they take the views expressed by any individual member as a veto or an express decision in favour. So in that case, if the officers come forward with a proposal in my ward, although I've expressed my views, I will consider it. And I think that is the spirit of what is intended, that there is a more of an open book approach, but it's informed by what our officers have heard this evening. So on that basis, I'm more than happy to support the recommendation, and I hope colleagues will too.
Through you, Chair, just to be absolutely clear for the benefit of any future discussions on this, members need to continue to approach these matters with an open mind. So any views that may have been expressed on the appropriateness or otherwise of sites discussed, you should continue to have an open mind and not predetermine any matter that's coming before you in future. So when members have said absolutely not, they will need to consider whether they still have an open mind in relation to this issue. So if any member wants to come and talk to me separately outside the meeting about things they've said in relation to this subject that might impact on this council's future decision making, I would strongly recommend you do so sooner rather than later.
Thank you. Councillor Gamble, I will come to you now, sorry.
I'm sort of quite, I'm very confused by Councillor Fitzherbert's suggestion. His suggestion, as far as Councillor Hobson seems to be, they're saying that officers now consider the things that people were suggested. Without Councillor Fitzherbert's proposal, what would have happened? Would they have just disappeared into the ether? I kind of presumed that was going to be happening anyway, so this seems a sort of nonsense. And then I'm very surprised at the idea that we've just sat through 2 hours of debate with the officer stating that he didn't want to make the decision because members had said that they didn't want him to make the decision, and now we're doing a proposal back saying that officers now should not only, because Councillor Fitzherbert's initial thing was not just that they should look at the sites, but they should look for any more sites that they think are suitable because they know best. Well, that was the original position at the start, wasn't it? I mean, we seem to be, this is, yeah. If you anything else, I think I'll faint.
Councillor Bertha.
Thank you. I'm just thinking in my mind that maybe, following on for what Councillor Atkins said, that maybe we should go back to the, was it 8 temporary tolerated sites that were, 7 or 8 that were rejected, although we didn't reject them, and maybe we should get on the bus and go and have a look at those sites and then consider them at a meeting. I like the idea of, but we obviously can't go to 20, but if we went back to those ones that were put forward initially, we can all go and have a look at them.
I would second that.
So we have a proposal on the table from Councillor Fitzherbert. Councillor Fitzherbert, you've heard the suggestion from Councillor Mrs Burford. Would you be willing to incorporate that within your proposal?
I think we'll be looking at these sites at some stage anyway, when we've got them, but let's list them first. That's what I'm suggesting. You know, we'll get there anyway, or else what I was trying to do was trying to wind up a session that we're all getting quite tired about now, and to try and come to sort of a sensible solution and some direction for the officers. I think that would be part of the process anyway, but I don't want to stipulate any more onerous work and everything on the officers at the moment.
Okay, so we've had a proposal and a second from Councillor Fitzherbert.
Can I propose we move to a vote, Chair?
Yes, that's where I'm going. Sorry, thank you. So I'd like to have a vote. All those in favour, please show. Against? Abstention? We've just, no, sorry.
It's late in the day, and whilst I've got a copy of the Constitution here.
I didn't take that as a full movement of a proposal.
So council's just made a decision. The decision can't be amended now. You've determined the matter before you. I think that's why I asked Councillor Fitzherbert if he was willing to take that on
Point of
board.
order, could you just read out what the decision is that we've made?
So my scribble of what Councillor Fitzherbert proposed was that council task officers to go away with the feedback that's been provided on the sites discussed in Appendix 1 and develop further proposals based on that for consideration by council. Is that correct? Have I got that correct? Yes. I'm glad you voted on that and then decided what it was.
With that, I've got to go on to item 14, sealing of documents.
Chair, I'll move sealing the document.
Second? All those in favour? Thank you. With that, we'll call it a night. Thank you very much.